Welcome to Riviera Rats, a Palme d'Or podcast. I am Bill.
And I am Greg.
And today we are going into the deep, deep past of last year to talk about Anatomie d'un Chute, the Palme d'Or winner of 2023. I think it was the first French Palme d'Or winner in many a year. And do you have input on this? I forgot to look this up.
Titane.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, never mind. We can scrap that intro. Anyway, the point is, I'm very happy to be doing this again. I'm very happy that we have far less homework than we did in 1946. And
that's right. And actually, we have no movies we had to watch on YouTube.
Yeah. I'm just sorry that I didn't get around to as many rewatches as I wanted to, because there's a lot in this. This is a stacked list, and there's a lot in this competition that I would be happy to rewatch. As evidenced by the fact that many of the films in this competition went on to critical glory worldwide, including Academy Award nominations, if not wins. So, lots to talk about today.
Yeah, I agree with you. About 11 of these movies made my top 20 of 2023. I will spend probably some time in this episode talking about the movies I believe should have been on the roster, when ultimately there's no way all of them could fit.
Yeah. But, Greg, we are recording this 2 days before the Academy Awards. You and I are going to be watching them on a big screen. How excited are we?
You know, I am really excited. I'm really excited that no matter who wins Best Actress, we win ultimately. Like it's a three-way race between three actresses whose speeches I would look forward to hearing.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Timmy dressing ridiculous as always.
Yeah. Accepting an Academy Award shirtless in leather chaps or something. Yeah.
Yeah. The outfit that what's his nuts from All of Us Strangers keeps trying to pull off, even though he's 20 years too old to do it. Andrew Scott, is that what I'm thinking of? Yeah. I think Conan will do a decent job, but I don't mean to jinx that. Very often, good comedians have not done well.
If he does or if he doesn't, everyone's going to complain. I've watched the Oscars long enough to know that somebody's going to be offended by a joke, someone's going to find it not funny, someone's going to say, oh my god, he's the worst host ever.
Mm-hmm. My greatest hope for the night is that Sean Baker wins one of his 4 nominations. Mm-hmm. There is an alternate reality where he wins 0, and I'm just hoping that's not the case.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, because I don't want to ask you any questions that I know you already answered in your long recording yesterday evening of BGM, but I wanted to know, of all of the movies this past year that you watched to get ahead of the precursors in preparation for the Oscar noms and your death race, did you come out duped on any of them? What was the biggest, what was your biggest loser? Like, what was the movie you watched that was the hardest to watch and then got no nominations?
Oh, in terms of prep.
Yeah.
The Last Showgirl, probably.
Mine was Blitz.
I didn't mind Blitz as much as you did, though. I didn't think it was great. It's a movie that puts a lot of power into its visuals, and then the story didn't really carry me along. But, so yeah, I wouldn't call it I didn't think it was torture to sit through. I just didn't think it was remarkable.
Yeah, and quite saccharine. It really laid the cheese on thick. But tell me what was...
Without being honest about it.
Well said.
Yeah.
And then tell me about The Last Showgirl, because I don't know if I will watch it.
Well, we talked about it on the Oscar episode, so people, if they've listened to that was a couple weeks ago. I don't know that there's much to say about it. It's very, very, very poorly written. I mean, it's like someone took Facebook quotes and made a script out of them. You know, every time they talk about what it is to be a woman in this world, it's super basic, first level. It's like you put something in place in order to work on it later, but then you forgot to work on it later. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just like, I'm going to have a scene here where she talks about how hard it was to be a working mom, but then you forget to like make it nuanced or individual or character. So everything everyone is saying is basically like boilerplate. I don't know how do I say this without sounding like a nightmare of a conservative person, because I don't disagree with anything in the spirit of what it's talking about. It's just it does it in this very basic way. And Pam is lovely, but like I don't know that there's a lot there. You know, I just don't know that she has a lot of colors to paint from on her palette. So she's fine, and I appreciate this effort to to take her seriously. But I told you this before. I've never had trouble taking her seriously to begin with. So, and Jamie Lee Curtis is awful in it.
Well, I take that as a fair warning. How's the Miley Cyrus song?
the Miley Cyrus song. I don't remember it.
Probably played in the closing credits.
Yes, so Greg, like I said, today we're doing the 2023 Cannes Film Festival. Greg, please tell us about the festival.
This is our 76th festival, which ran from May 16th to May 27th of 2023. And because this festival is so recent in our memory, I can actually recall what you and I were doing around this time, which was going to the Fox Theater to see Nicole Holofcener's You Hurt My Feelings.
Oh, I don't remember those things coinciding, but that's cool.
Yeah, it was a really heartwarming night at the movies. I remember leaving the theater covered in tears, and feeling like I just shared something really sweet.
That movie is my worst nightmare. Overhearing someone I love being like, his stuff is so bad, and I don't know how to tell him.
Yeah, and then more generally, hearing someone say a criticism that you never want to hear about yourself, whether it's about something you create or not. And confirming your worst anxiety about yourself.
Yeah.
More about this festival. The poster was designed by Lionel Avignon, and I can't tell if this last name is French or Dutch, but I'm going to try it anyway. Stéphane de Viviers of the design studio Heartland Villa. From a photo taken by Jack Garofalo during the shooting of the 1968 romantic drama La Chamade, or Heartbeat, with Catherine Deneuve.
Yeah, it's a great poster. I love that picture.
It's a beautiful poster. If I ever become the dweeb who collects vintage festival posters, this will be one of the ones I get. A blonde beauty with brown eyes is a rare thing. I find.
I didn't realize that. That's also because she's probably not a real blonde. She's probably like a mousy brown.
Oh. Well, in that case, she has good taste, because usually when non-blondes go blonde, they go too hard.
Yeah.
There were 2 honorary Palme d'Ors given out this year. One went to Michael Douglas, and I can assume this is because the French recognize this man for the spectacle of his balls swinging from rear view.
Because of all the pussy he ate that gave him cancer. The French respect the game, you know?
Totally. They respect the hustle.
Yeah.
And the other honorary Palme d'Or went to Harrison Ford, whose contributions to popular cinema we don't need to spell out here, but I do want to know, what is peak hot Harrison Ford for you, Bill?
Mid-80s, so Frantic, when he's naked in Frantic, and Temple of Doom, like that mid-80s period.
I was going to say, the tits in Temple of Doom.
Yeah, like a chest I could just lick for days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shockingly, and rarely, we have no Isabel watch for this festival.
Yeah.
But don't worry, because we still have statutory rape and French incest.
Yep, that's right. We sure do.
But, Bill, why don't you tell us about the other competitions?
Absolutely. I guess because the festival is so recent, I can't say that I recognize a lot of the films in the other competition. Maybe if they made the rounds, they didn't make themselves known to me. I don't really know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But in Un Certain Regard, one of the notable ones was the movie How to Have Sex, which, did you end up seeing that? I remember you're making plans to see it.
I really wanted to see it. I still plan to see it.
I think it's a movie.
Yeah, the next time I reactivate my movie, I will watch it. But I think part of the reason why I keep being deterred is because it looks so Tampa core.
Yeah, it's very Spring Breakers coded, where it's just like, isn't it fascinating how we find the depths beneath all this teenage debauchery? And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm sure it's better than that, but I just mean that's how it was sold to me, as like pretending to be soulful about something that you're just being exploitative about.
Yeah, that's my worst worry, and I'm going to remain hopeful that it's just a trailer misleading me.
Yeah, which happens a lot. The trailer for Honora makes it look like a thriller, so yeah. Out of competition, we have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This is the second Indiana Jones to open the Cannes Film Festival. They do like to have a blockbuster do it. It's also the reason why he got the honorary Palme d'Or. I think they were initially only planning to give it to Michael Douglas, but they figured, how many times can we get Harrison to come? So while he's here, we might as well. Because he is like 80 years old, time's a ticking. We also have Jean Dubarry screening out of competition. Of course, a very highly controversial film for the fact that it's the first major project that Johnny Depp appears in following the public relations debacle of his very messy divorce. And the trial was a libel or a slander trial, was it? That he initiated against her?
Yeah,
Is that what
I
it
believe
was?
so.
Yeah, because he claimed that he couldn't get work because of the things she had claimed, and, you know.
It was a strange scandal that I completely disengaged from. Like, I didn't give a shit from the very outset.
I'm sure that there is a lot that she put up with from him. I think what people are ignoring, though, is that it happens very often with couples that the thing that drew you together is what drives you apart. I think these two people were really turned on by each other's crazy on day one. And then once the passion goes and suddenly you don't care about fucking all the time because you just want someone to order the groceries or clean up after themselves, suddenly everything that you used to find really sexy about them is bad. And then things just go from there.
Yeah, and then you throw in how hungover the two of them are all the time.
Yeah. Anyway, who cares? Also, Killers of the Flower Moon screened out of competition. This movie ends up in the Oscar race at the end of the year with a lot of the films that are in competition, and is a film that you and I both liked. I know you were a really big fan of this film.
Yeah.
And special screenings, we have Robot Dreams, which is a lovely animated film that was
still not seen it.
It's wonderful. And Strange Way of Life, which is Almodovar's second English language film and a short film that I still haven't seen.
It's actually my least favorite thing he's ever made. It's really like flat and colorless.
Yeah. And then in Director's Fortnight, we have the 3-hour Vietnamese film that has been sitting on my Hoopla watch list for months.
Same.
Which is Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell.
I think that movie was, after Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World, I think it was like the top reviewed movie on Metacritic last year, and I still could never find the mood to watch it. I know,
and by the time I watch it, I'm going to be like, why did I wait so long? I know why. Anyway, Greg, tell us about the jury.
Keeping with this trend of Ken picking jury presidents while they're still like hot on the heels of some famous effort, they picked Ruben Östlund, Swedish filmmaker and member of the Two Palm Club, to head the jury just 50 years after our mother, Ingrid Bergman.
My mother, Ingrid Bergman.
Had led the jury in 1973.
Oh, are you the president of the jury this year? Do you know my mother, Ingrid Bergman, was the president of the jury in 1973?
You know, my mother, Ingrid Bergman, also had a triangle of sadness. And this is on the heels of his poem from the year before, Triangle of Sadness.
Yeah.
A somewhat divisive movie that you and I both liked.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they have another Palme d'Or winner of recent years under him on this jury.
Absolutely. That stood out to me as well. We'll get to that in just a moment.
Like, I don't remember the last time there were multiple Palme winners on the jury, but I probably haven't studied the juries all that carefully.
But just thinking that Ruben Östlund is the president right after Triangle of Sadness. Mm. This past year, Greta Gerwig was the president right after the gargantuan success of Barbie. Mm-hmm. I'm now wondering what filmmaker or actor or actress would lead the 2025 jury.
Brady Corbet, if he can afford it.
Possibly.
Or Coralie.
Coralie would be a bold choice. I'm even wondering if there's like an actor on the level of like a Sandra Hüller who could do it. Also in this jury, we have Paul Dano, American actor and actually competent filmmaker, mm-hmm. but who, for my money, is the worst and most overrated performer alive on film screen today.
I mean, that's an extreme statement, but I don't like him as an actor. I find him really false. Yeah. He
has a non-cinematic face. He always plays cucks, but always uninterestingly. I think the cuck is a very exciting character. You can do a lot with it, and he always does it so unimaginatively. I think he thinks he's hitting multiple levels if he yells a lot.
Yeah, it's significant that he broke through with Little Miss Sunshine because he doesn't speak for most of the film, and I think that there's an increased power in that. I think it's when he delivers, because not long after that he's in There Will Be Blood, and I, having loved him in Little Miss Sunshine, was prepared to like him on a certain level with Daniel Day-Lewis in that film, and I found his performance to be really disingenuous.
Yeah, and then it continues with the Batman. Yeah. And Okja, the most I've actually ever liked him was when he was a child actor in Long Island Expressway.
Yeah, or Looper. He's okay in Looper.
Never seen Looper.
Oh, it's great.
You're recommending a Rian Johnson movie?
It's the only one that I think is great.
Also in our jury, we've got Julia Ducournau, French filmmaker and recent Palme d'Or winner for Titane.
Titane.
Also known for the cannibalism horror movie Raw, which I've still not seen. It's about cannibalism, right?
I think so.
Yeah. We've got Brie Larson, American actress, and the notes here that you wrote in our outline is director. What has she directed?
She directed a movie called Unicorn Store that Netflix bought from, I think that's what it's called. Netflix bought it from film festivals and then released it. And then like one person talked shit about her on Twitter. And next thing you know, Netflix and everyone else is coming to her defense to speak up against the bullying that she's getting because poor Brie Larson. I mean, this woman is a wealthy, famous actress who has won an Academy Award. But no matter how expensive a dress you put on her, she always looks like the girl who works at your local drugstore in your small town. And I feel like people are unreasonably defensive of her for that very reason.
Even in those Nissan commercials, she just looks like she's selling the car.
She also got to direct a movie. Like, she's okay. And so...
Yeah.
But it also doesn't help that she also promotes herself in this very, I don't know how to put it because I don't want to come across like a jerk.
I think I know what you're saying. She thinks she's Sharon Stone.
Right. And also she thinks she's like, I don't know, someone breaking through for women's rights in some way. But she's actually just a Hollywood actress who's not very bright. And I just don't have a problem with that. But it's funny that people mistake her for anything else. She posted about the time a TSA agent asked for her phone number. And she said, this is what women have to go through every day.
No, and that's what brown women have to go through every day.
Well, but also, a guy asked for your phone number. Like, what are you upset that someone with a shitty job asked you out? Because there are a lot of things that women have to go through every day, and I don't think that you're at the top of that pyramid. But also, she said that she played a journalist in Kong Skull Island because she makes movies as a form of activism. So this is not a genius that we're dealing with.
I mean, for all that said, for how much it bugs me that she took an Oscar away from Saoirse Ronan, we know it was not Charlotte's to win. I still want to see Short Term 12. I hear that's her best performance.
Yeah, okay, sure. I don't find her interesting as an actor. I don't think she's bad. I just don't find her interesting. I don't look at her and think, my God, I can't wait to hear what she says next.
0 star power.
Yeah.
We've got French actor Denis Ménochet, who is, to North Americans, most famous for his role as Mélanie Laurent's father in the beginning of Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, right.
Yeah. We've got Zambian Welsh filmmaker Rungano Nyoni, famous for I Am Not a Witch from the last decade, but also known for Straight Out of Un Certain Regard on Becoming a Guinea Fowl, which will come out this year.
Right.
And then we've got a person I did not learn much about, Atiq Rahimi, an Afghan-French director and writer. He's very celebrated and decorated in France, but is not... I get the sense has not crossed the pond.
Well, I get the impression that he's much more famous for his novels than he is for filmmaking. That was what my Google search revealed to me.
Same.
Yeah.
And then this next filmmaker's name pronunciation eludes me because it doesn't look typically Spanish. I'm going to try it anyway. Damien Giffron.
He's Argentinian, and Argentinians are either Italian or Jewish, so they rarely have Spanish names.
Or Nazis.
Yeah.
He's the Argentinian filmmaker who made...
He's cute, too. He's a cute redhead.
Well, so is Ralph in Sound of Music.
He's blonde, but yeah, okay.
Argentinian filmmaker who made a movie you and I both adore called Wild Tales, and we'll be covering it in our 2014 competition.
And which will be followed by a sequel soon.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. Relatos Salvajes.
Do you associate movies with the countries you were traveling in when you first saw their posters?
That's interesting. Yes, I do, because when I think it's the second Planet of the Apes movie, I remember the poster being all over Athens when I was there that summer. So
the Dawn? Yeah.
I can never remember if it's Rise or Dawn first, but yeah.
The Wild Tales reminds me of my trip to Argentina. And this last summer when I was in Italy, I was seeing posters for Parthenope and Marcello Mio everywhere.
Parthenope.
Oh.
It's a Greek name.
Can't scrub that one out.
Yeah. I have an aunt Parthenope. Yeah.
So you're saying I offended your aunt?
No, I'm just telling you that that's how it's pronounced.
And then last but not least, we've got Mariam Touzani, Moroccan filmmaker and actress, whose film Casablanca Beats you talked about in our 2021 episode, and who most recently made The Blue Caftan, which was Morocco's bid for the International Feature Film.
Is that a gay movie?
It is a gay movie, and I do want to watch it. It also
another one that's been on a list, a watch list on one streaming service or another for about 100 years.
Ditto. And it was one of those movies that was at the Lightbox for a second, and I missed the chance to see it on a big screen.
Yeah. Note to filmmakers, just make your movie 98 minutes long. Just do it. Because a lot of the times I'm flipping, and what I feel like watching is not about content. It's that I don't want to give up 2 hours 20.
Totally.
Yeah.
I also need to just say about this filmmaker, she is staggeringly beautiful. On a Shorey Aghdashloo level. But, Bill, won't you tell us about the competition list?
With plaisir. This is, like I said, one of the most stacked competition lists we have dealt with in a long time. We will get to the Palme d'Or eventually, but starting us off in second place is Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest, adapted from the novel by Sir Martin Amis, who died the day that the film actually had its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. It's interesting. It's a liberal riff on the original novel, because the novel is actually, it uses fictitious names to represent the people it's about. He uses the real names in the film, and then of course he's not working from like a structured screenplay adaptation of the novel. He what Jonathan Glazer did was set the entire cast up in that house for like 3 weeks, put cameras everywhere, and then filmed all of their improvisations. And then made the rest of the movie around that. So, which is quite fascinating. His movies are always highly experimental, and for my money, they always come off.
Yeah, I've still not seen Birth, but
I love Birth. Yeah,
I just love Birth.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree about all the other ones I've seen, and his music videos, which I loved in the 90s.
Yeah, and we rarely get a film from him. He's like a once in a decade guy, but I've always liked them. I really love Under the Skin. And it was nice to see him finally break through to official recognition, because his movies have always been highly, highly, highly praised. Sexy Beast is the only previous one to have received any Academy Award nominations, and of course it was just the one for Ben Kingsley. And then this time he actually went home with an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, the first time it went to the United Kingdom. And the film also won for its sound design, because of course the sound is one of the most impressive things about it. It's hard to... on the one hand, I could talk about this film for hours, but I feel like there's nothing I could possibly say that hasn't already been said, and it would shock me if anyone listening doesn't know anything about this movie. But of course, I don't have to explain to you that the plot is that it is set in the home of the commandant of Auschwitz. We never go into the actual camp in this film. It's entirely about them, with the noise that we hear in the background that is so subtly created that most of the time your brain is telling you you're hearing things that you're not necessarily sure you're hearing.
That's right.
But it's always like a sound of mechanization or whatever. And then just, a treatise on the banality of evil, as has been the phrase coined by Hannah Arendt, about the fact that these people aren't like snarl-toothed villains, but are doing what a lot of us do, participating in a system of oppression because it suits their daily schedule the best.
That's right. It's this Nazi officer or Nazi administrator and his wife are not they're not portrayed as arch evil. In fact, the movie's story, which centers around the conflict of the family might have to move to another city, is basically Meet Me in St. Louis.
That's right.
Set in Auschwitz.
Yeah.
And I think that makes for really interesting material. I also think a lot of the formalistic eccentricities to the movie bring it like an alien texture that only heightens its effect. I'm thinking about the weird sounds that pop into the Mika Levy score every once in a while, that wash of red that just happens between scenes at one point, the night vision sequences of the one villager sneaking around the camps, and then that cut to the present day at the very end where we are looking at present-day Auschwitz as a museum. All of these things are used to frame the film in reflexive terms and bring our attention to the film as a film, but not in a way that makes us feel any less engaged. It also is one of the 2 times in recent memory that I left a movie unsteady as I walked because I just been terrified for 2 hours solely through mere suggestion.
Yeah.
In this movie, through its ambient horror music.
Yep.
And then the other example comes to mind is Nickel Boys, which does a lot for not showing you anything that really happens.
Yeah, it's also the bone-chilling way in which everything is presented as quote-unquote normal in this movie. The way that they're swimming in the river and then all of a sudden bones are suddenly floating through. It's just treated as something that's just like, oh shit, like get out of the water. Like it's not, I don't know, it's one of the most disturbing experiments in like subtle horror filmmaking that you will ever see. The sunlight in this movie feels suspicious in some way. You know what I mean? Like shots of bright sunny gardens feel like...
And then it needs to be said, Sandra Hüller is doing something even totally different for Sandra Hüller. Like the way she waddles around her home.
I mean, that scene of her trying the fur coat on is unforgettable. And
Creepy.
that part, I mean, her mother visiting and looking and seeing the smoke out the window, even though a scene before that, she's like, oh, I'm pretty sure the woman whose house I used to clean is on the other side of the wall. And you're like, well, that's what this is all about, isn't it?
It is.
You know, as many of these revolutionary time periods are, is people thinking that they're making things right by turning the tables on the people that had more than them.
My last thoughts on this movie are distance can make an affection for a movie increase or decrease depending on trends in artistic taste or in political favor. I really hope when I do finally watch this movie a second time that its formalist audaciousness doesn't date. And I also hope that our distance from the Jonathan Glazer speech, regardless of how it was interpreted, doesn't rub off on how people read the text itself.
Yeah. I mean, partly the problem with that speech is that people actually heard it wrong.
Yeah, they cherry-picked it.
Yeah, or they just flat out heard it wrong. He said that he did not say that he disavowed his Jewishness. He said he disavowed the use of his Jewishness to promote something that he thought that he didn't agree with. Yeah, and from there you can go where you need to go. But anyway, and it should also be said about this film: for many people, it was the deserving Palme d'Or winner. Many people assumed this was going to win the Palme on its way into the festival, so where it ended up is interesting. It being the grand jury prize possibly suggests that it is the movie that the jury wanted for the Palme d'Or, but that Ruben Östlund disagreed. But we don't really know.
I do read Ruben Östlund as having more authority in a jury room than Pedro Almodovar.
Yep. Third place goes to Aki Kaurismäki for Fallen Leaves. Kaurismäki, for all his success in the international cinema sphere, hasn't been at Cannes many times. He was there with Drifting Clouds in '96, which we talked about. He won second place, I believe, for The Man Without a Past. He was there for Lights in the Dusk and Le Havre in 2011, which is one of my favorites of his films. So it is a big deal that he does come back, and he makes another one of his films in his world of small people with big feelings, beautifully shot. It's such an elegant film. It's a movie in which the world is a bad place, and he represents that faithfully without being twee, but that the people who are open to connecting with each other can survive it if they just stick to that. And that's why his films have this charm and this optimism without being sappy.
Yeah, he's a great example of how to make artistic comedies. Yeah. This movie is, for my money, a very close second for The Palm Dog. I know Snoop is the actor the dog actor who looks like he's doing the most performing, but
I mean, they trained that dog to have his tongue hang out of his mouth, so you know.
Totally. But the dog in this movie is visual perfection. This is my ideal pet. Something I think stands out in his movies, in this one and in Drifting Clouds, which we watched in 1996, is how costumes and sets can look anachronistic and almost out of time in a way that looks stylized, but actually it's an observation on how working class culture doesn't grow with the times as much as people with spending money. And it reminds me of, if you're going on a road trip and you stop in a small town, it feels like you stepped a bit into a time warp. And that's just an observation I appreciate about this movie.
And all of his films have that vibe. You know, I just assume that's what Finnish restaurants look like when I watch his movies.
I'm still very early in my exploration of this guy's filmography, but it's so far an exciting peek into someone's work, someone who cares so deeply about the everyday lives of the working class, and I'm looking forward to what he does next. And I love that he doesn't overstay his welcome. His movies are never more than 100 minutes long.
I know.
If that.
If that, yeah. And he also seems to have a new muse in Alma Poisti, and I think she's great. You know, all of his movies were with Kati Utinen. I don't know if that's how you say her name. She was always his lead for a long time. And she's probably still working, but, you know, she is older, and maybe that's why. But
she the one who looks like the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful, wonderful actor. Best actress winner at Cannes.
Oh.
Best director. Well, are we going to swoon, Greg? I turned to you halfway through the first scene of this movie, and I was like, do you want to make out? Because this movie is delectable. It is The Taste of Things' original title, La Passion de Dodin Buffon, which is the title of the novel it's based on, and was originally going to be released to the international world as The Pot au Feu.
That's right.
And then, for whatever reason, the distributors decided to go with The Taste of Things. Who cares? This movie's by Tran Anh Hung, who had never been at the festival before, and whose best-known film is The Scent of Green Papaya, for which Vietnam has received its so far only Oscar nomination for Best Foreign Language Film in 1993. He also took top prize at, I want to say Berlin for Ciclo.
I think you're right. He won at Berlin for Ciclo, I think.
Yes. But The Taste of Things was certainly the first time I'd heard his name in a very long time. This is a movie set in the manner of a late 19th century, early 20th century gourmand's home. He's a famous chef, retired chef in the novel. I don't know if I can't remember if they make that clear in the film. But we see his cook preparing meals for him and his friends who are all about the adventures of food. And the relationship that he has with her, it is a movie, I mean, to describe the plot, there's really not much to say about it, but to enjoy its earthly delights is, I don't want to say too much because we have more to say about this film, or at least I do by the end of this episode, but this movie is perfection.
It is. Its painterly use of light, it seems to be as much inspired by French poetic realism as it is the great painters of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Maybe even earlier. I think some of it even feels Baroque, the use of chiaroscuro. I really love Juliette Binoche's tender and controlled performance, where you can sense her every emotion. I love that we can feel the rich flavors that little apprentice Pauline is tasting.
Yeah.
Just through the slight changes of her Mona Lisa smile.
I love that character. I think about that character all the time.
You know I hate children on screen, and this kid won me over.
Without a doubt. Made me want to taste bone marrow. Yeah.
Oh, I love bone marrow. I one time took a shot of whiskey through a half bone, and bone marrow came down with it. So I was tasting bourbon and bone marrow at the same time. It was incredible.
Not the riskiest behavior that Greg has indulged in, listener, just so you know. That's him on a Christian day. Yeah.
But something I want to say about the experience of going to see this with you. You and I had seen a lot of great movies together in 2023. And we'd seen a lot of great movies in general.
I'm ready to leave it in 2023. No more movies with Greg.
Yeah, totally. And it felt like every week I had a new favorite movie. Like it started with Past Lives. Then I saw Anatomy of Fall. That's my favorite movie of the year. Then we saw The Holdovers. Then I saw May December. Then I saw The Zone of Interest. And then the Oscars are about to come out. This movie drops a week or two before. And I think we're just going to, do our Cannes homework. And it blew us away.
Yeah. And I saw it a second time because, as I told you, my sister's dream is to be Juliette Binoche in this film. And that kitchen is a dream for her. She practically started crying when the movie started. And then she spent the whole movie muttering all the food, the recipes to her. She was trying to guess what she was cooking, or not even guessing. I think she knew what she was cooking. And she was muttering them all to herself like she was watching porn. She was so she was just so having such a personal experience with it, and I'm really glad. And I'm also really glad that it was such a hit. It played at our varsity for months, so it wasn't difficult to take her to see it a second time.
you turned to me in the first 30 minutes where they're cooking that feast, that first act of a feast, and said, "Oh my god, I'm so fucking horny."
Yeah, I've never wanted to try baked Alaska before that. What do they call it in French? Bombe Norvège.
That's right. I was wondering what they call it in France.
This is also a movie about temporality, which is what I appreciate about it. It's not just sensual indulgence. It is about the fact that life's sensual pleasures are to be savored, whether it is food or love or sex or summer. Mm-hmm. These are all brief and beautiful, and we have to, enjoy them to the fullest because they will be gone, as is reflected in the eventual outcome for a character in this film. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I'm being coy. We always do spoilers about every other movie, but yeah. And then also just the magic of having Binoche reuniting with her ex-partner, with whom she hasn't spoken in like 15 years by the time they filmed this. They have a daughter together, but they'd gone their separate ways. And they make magic together on screen.
They really do. And he can volley with her.
Best Actor goes to Koji Yakusho for Perfect Days by Wim Wenders. Wim Wenders has always been an adorer of Ozu films, so I was not in the least bit surprised that he made a movie in Tokyo, very much in tribute to Ozu, including shooting, a lot of low-angled shots from the level of a tatami mat. I believe the aspect ratio he uses is the square that Ozu was also fond of. Mm-hmm. This is a beautiful film about a Tokyo toilet cleaner who spends his days attending to the city's public facilities, but also does so between moments of quiet reflection on the world around him. We see his routine periodically disrupted by experiences that actually reveal his idea of his solitude to be an illusion, but not in a devastating way. This is also a movie that thankfully is not too long.
Yep.
And that also contributes to its beauty. It's a delicate, poignant work. I like Wim Wenders. I like his general output, although I haven't loved all of his films. And a lot of them, even when they're great, can be weighty. So I love how to the point this movie is. And I do love his performance. I think it's a wonderful choice for Best Actor.
Yeah, it's a worthy win because Yakusho is the takeaway from the movie more than anything else.
Yeah.
It is a delicate, small movie akin to classics like Ikiru, and it's about the resilience that we gain in taking time to enjoy what's right in front of us.
Which is also the taste of things. Like, what a lovely way to spend your movie week,
Yeah. I should be enraged by all the obvious soundtrack choices in the movie. In fact, you turned to me and wondered if I was pissed off by all the needle drops. But it works in this movie because through the lead character, we enjoy the object fetishization of being a music collector.
And specifically of cassette tapes, right? Isn't it cassettes or is it CDs?
Or cassettes or A-tracks, something like that.
Yeah, they're a part of the narrative. So the needle drops don't just feel like emotional manipulation, which is usually why you hate needle drops, is because they're telling you to feel something that the movie isn't doing a good job of making you feel.
Or they are trying to dictate taste. And I like that not all of his music choices are elite. Like he listens to Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison.
Yeah.
But I did swoon while he was driving to Pale Blue Eyes by Velvet Underground.
Best Actress goes to, I'm sorry if I can't say this right, my Turkic is not good, Merve Dizdar for About Dry Grasses by one of the titans of Cannes, Nuri Bilge Ceylan, who's Once Upon a Time in Anatolia is still my favorite of his films. But he has received a 5-star rating from me on a ridiculous amount of occasions, including on this film, which is about a teacher teaching in a very poor remote Turkic village where he has been posted for 4 years, and he explodes with rage when students accuse him and his colleague of inappropriate conduct. The inappropriate conduct is not what you would think it would be. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating how much of this movie just spends dealing with him not handling his rage very well. He just keeps blowing up at everybody. I kept turning to Greg during the movie and being like, "How you doing? You doing okay? How's your day? You doing okay?
You okay there?"
Because he's the kind of guy where, like, you walk in to say good morning in the staff room, and he's like, "This fucking machine's not working."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh, how you doing? You doing okay?
Yeah.
Everything okay at home?" Yeah.
You need something?
Yeah.
Want to go for a walk?
Yeah.
Let's go for a walk.
It's like, the piece of chalk breaks, and they just tear the whole room apart, and you're like, "I don't think it's the chalk. Just gonna lay that out there."
I honestly think this is a forced award. It's clear that the Östlund jury were trying to find a way to wedge this movie into the awards roster.
Yes, because she's wonderful, but she's a
Yeah.
minor character, and I don't walk away with an impression of her. In fact, I would rewatch the movie just to remember what she does. She is good, but
She
yeah,
is.
I definitely got that impression as soon as we saw it, that her award was mainly to get this movie in the winner's circle. And it's like, then just split the grand jury prize if that's what you're going to do.
Totally. And actually, when I reorganize all the winners, I would give Best Actor to this because I think this guy is such a credible menace and such a sore loser. It's strange, the tension, the aesthetic tension in this movie, because it's very elegant and it's very beautiful, but it's so austere. You leave feeling how long and boring and meaningless life is.
Yeah. Just
And
a turn from the things we've been talking about in the previous two films, yeah.
Absolutely, but it's so convincing, and I don't know, I was sapping it up. Is it weird to feel so indulgent about such a negative feeling?
No,
that's
because that's the
does.
feeling his movies. That's the feeling his movies bring out in me. This and Winter Sleep are both movies where I could just stare at hills covered in snow for hours and not get bored, and I don't know why. There's something about his movies where I just feel like I'm immersed. Maybe it's because I'm not from there, and it's showing me a world that is completely opposite to one that I know. And at the same time, there are also haunting, lingering traces of ancestral voices calling me because, despite the fact that I am Greek, my mother's whole side are from Turkey. My grandmother was born there. My grandfather's parents were born there. So, and I recognize the cultural similarities when I remember my grandmother and how she kept her house and her kitchen. So there is that. But I'm fascinated by his movies, and I really love this film.
Very often when I love a movie, it makes me mistake that I want to go into the world where it was filmed. After Perfect Days, I want to go to Tokyo and use all the public toilets.
Yeah. Well, if there's one thing I know that you're going to do in Tokyo, it's use the public toilets. But go on.
But after watching About Dry Grasses, I thought, I really want to go to Turkey. I do not want to go to Anatolia.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to go to Turkey too, but I don't really want to go to Turkey, you know.
Oh, I have a feeling it would be a rich tourist experience. You just have to plan it right. It's not.
No, I don't want to go to places where hitting on a guy results in me being beaten to death in jail. I want the worst thing to be that I get rejected.
Oh, I think you just got to know your speakeasies.
I know, but I'm not that guy. There are some people who can charm their way through the whole world, and they know their speakeasies, and they can go to really highly dangerous places, and they know codes for everything, and they know how to do it. I just don't have that skill. I'm not that person.
Okay.
I told you, I'm the one who ruins the orgy, right? I bring librarian energy to orgies. I show up and I'm like, when do we start? Who wants to fuck who? And you're not supposed to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of the sexiness of that sort of thing.
Did you ever read that Vice article from years ago about the guy who attended a Eurovision-themed sex party?
No.
Oh, I have to send it to you. It's so funny. He realizes halfway through he's not actually at a real orgy. He's at a party that is Eurovision themed, and then there is sex.
Yeah. But that's the thing. And like that's happened in a lot of parties that my friends have had and whatever. And maybe I was there and I left early or whatever, but for it to happen, you kind of have to let it happen naturally, and I have a tendency to force things, which is that like, what time do we start? You know, and that doesn't work. Anyway. And to my credit, it's partly because I don't feel shame about sex. So I don't need us to pretend we're going to watch a movie.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, I respect that.
Yeah. Ceylan, of course, had won the Palme for Winter Sleep, and he wins an award pretty much every time he brings a film to the festival in one form or another. But he had been many times Distant in 2003, which is a film I have a particularly lovely memory of watching that movie with my dad. Climates, Three Monkeys, Once Upon a Time in Anatolia, which was second place, and The Wild Pear Tree in 2018, which did not win any prizes and which I still haven't seen, even though it has also been on my Canopy watch list for 6 years. All right. And the last of our award winners is the most dubious of our award winners, which is Best Screenplay going to Yuji Sakamoto for Monster, directed by Hirokazu Kore-eda. Kore-eda had won the Palme d'Or for Shoplifters and was not at Cannes with my favorite of his films, which is Still Walking, which is brilliant. Kore-eda is a marvelous filmmaker. He's also a highly prolific filmmaker, so I never get too upset when I don't love one of his movies because he's going to make another one in about 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot to choose from with him. One of the things that I find I don't know if I find it disappointing, but I definitely find it true about him, is that his movies began... I mean, I don't remember what his actual first movie... Oh, no, I do. I think it's Mabarossi is his first movie, which I watched not long ago. He gains international recognition with Afterlife. That's the first movie that I remember knowing who he was.
Yeah, same.
And his earliest films are marked by their lack of sentimentality, and that lack abates with time. Like, his movies become more sentimental as time goes on, and it kind of undercuts their power for me. I like Afterlife. I like Nobody Knows, Daremo Shiranai, which won Best Actor at Cannes many years ago. I saw that in the theater with my sister. It's a very upsetting story. And then sometimes he does melodrama really well, like Father Like Son is a particularly enjoyable film of his that Spielberg was looking to remake, and I understand why, because it had the plot of a Hollywood drama. I love Our Little Sister. That's his sentimentality at its finest. I actually didn't love Shoplifters as much as everyone did.
Yeah.
Broker is good. I found it a bit too long, but this is a movie that I was really enjoying at the beginning, and I thought, oh my god, he's back. I thought it was fascinating, the first section. But then once we start finding out what the secret is, which is spoiled by the fact that this movie won the Queer Palm, I find that it just becomes a real heartstring-pulling, touchy-feely, aren't kids cute kind of thing, whose heart is always in the right place, whose actors are fantastic. I just didn't care. And at the beginning, I was really deeply in. Also, this is a movie about children who spend far too long unsupervised.
Well, I kept waiting for a clown to eat them. I found this movie contrived. The synchronicities and the coincidences are just too many.
Yeah.
Like the amount of times the movie turns on its head and shows you, oh, but this was really what was going on. And I suppose you could derive that the movie is about the easy conclusions we jump to in our concerns that children grow up, right? But there's just too many reveals. And at a certain point, it becomes like a Iñárritu movie, you know?
Yes, absolutely. That teacher was really cute, though. I thought that guy was really cute.
Yeah, I would say
He has
so.
a mushroom haircut, but I think he's really cute.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
I also wanted more for Ryuichi Sakamoto's last score.
I know.
I thought it was rather laid on thick and maybe misplaced.
Yeah, but I also didn't expect him to do like one last score in that regard.
No.
I think that he still had other plans when he died. I think that he just kept doing his best to keep going until he no longer could. He's no relation to the screenwriter, by the way, even though they're both Sakamoto.
Oh, must be a common name, or common enough name. I do recommend people go and listen to Sakamoto's last studio album, 12, which he recorded in the last year that he was dying from lung failure, essentially. And it's really sparse and haunting and
I mean, his
beautiful.
music is touching piano music, and you put that in the director's hands, and it can be used well, and it can be used very badly. And in his case, in Sakamoto's case, I've seen it done both.
This is true.
Yeah, and I guess that, as you mentioned, this movie unfolds in a kind of Rashomon-esque plot structure, which is that we have a situation, and then we see the situation again from someone else's point of view, and then from someone else's point of view. In the beginning, it's a mother wondering why her kid is coming home beaten up by the teacher. We lose the mother early in the film, and it's a shame, because I really like that character the most.
Oh.
And what we find out is that her son has actually been defending the class's very obvious gay kid, who's actually possibly like non-binary. Like there's a perceived gender fluidity to this kid, but they're children, so who knows? And he's been defending him, but he's also protecting his own reputation because he doesn't want the other kids to bully him the way they bully this kid. And the conflicts that this causes in him is what results in the way things play out, which then becomes a love story played out in a rainstorm. I don't know. It's the kind of film festival movie that I expect the TIFF audiences to go for, like upper middle class retirees who think they know what sophisticated is, but actually just love being emotionally indulged.
Because it's a Nadine Labaki movie?
Yeah.
I'm really encouraged by what you said about all these other Kore-eda movies that you've seen and I have not, because this is my fourth outing with him, and Afterlife is the best of the four, but the past three I've seen now are giving me the sense of somebody who can't resist milking the last drop of dramatic affect from any scene that would best be left told plainly.
Yeah.
And it really does veer into cheese. Like, he doesn't trust us enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I feel like that's getting worse with him as time goes on.
Yeah, but maybe he'll turn it around, like you said, because he's prolific.
All right, those are our award winners. To go on to the films that also played in competition that did not win awards, we might as well start with Asphalt City, originally titled Black Flies, which is the name of the novel.
What a gross name.
I guess because of the body, there's that point where the body covered in black flies.
Yeah.
They were probably worried, first of all, that the title would come across as racist, because that's probably an implication, an ironic implication of the novel's title, but also it doesn't sell the movie the way Asphalt City does. This is a movie by Jean-Stéphane Sauvaire, who had been at the festival with Johnny Mad Dog in 2008. This is a movie in which Sean Penn plays what is he, an EMT? No.
Dale Dickey?
What do they call them? I'm too tired from...
He's a paramedic.
He's a paramedic. Thank you. He's a paramedic who spends the whole movie with a toothpick in his mouth.
It's how true.
Like, you're in situations where anything can happen, including dealing with people who are not at their best, whose arms are flailing around. Do you really want to take a chance with that?
Yeah. I know it's a cliche to ever say any civil service is doing the Lord's work. I cringe when people say that about me, even though I know they're just trying to compliment me. Mm-hmm. But I have friends who are paramedics and who have to use all of their benefits and are in therapy all the time. Yeah. And I really admire what they do because they basically just signed up for a life of trauma.
Well, you spend all of your time in people's worst moments.
The amount of blood loss you witness, the amount of times you find people deceased after days of putrefaction.
Yeah, or just in some form of crisis. I mean, this is also what cops go through, which is why they also burn out. This is why a lot of people in these service to humanity burn out, is because you're always... I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think this movie is bullshit, and not because I think what the movie is showing is bullshit. I fully believe that these guys spend all day in the situations that they spend in, but everything in this movie feels absolutely geared towards trauma porn. Yep. And it's pretending that it's some kind of hard-hitting drama about this young guy who is being exposed to the realities of life, but actually it's peering in a lascivious way.
I would agree with that. I would say what works for it is a convincing performance from Ty Sheridan.
Who's so sexy.
Truly. And a sexy lizard.
Yeah.
And ambient music usually feels like an afterthought, but in this movie it does add something. It makes me feel burnout and brain fog akin the characters.
Well, and Sauvaire is all about sensory overload. His prayer, we talked about this in a previous episode, Prayer at Dawn or whatever that movie was called, the Thai prison movie, is another one where it's like shaky close-ups and noise all the time, and it's like that feels so affected. Because again, I know that a paramedic spends all day in a red zone, but like they also have a moment to drink a coffee sometimes too. Like it's not real life is not edited that quickly.
Yeah, their whole life isn't like City of God,
right?
And then where the movie really fails is there's just no dimension to any of these relationships.
Yeah,
like it works the best when it's focusing on the minutia of the job, and then it fails whenever it has to do character work.
Yeah, and it ends with Sean Penn throwing himself off a building, which is so pretentious, but also
such a tease because he won't do it in real life.
Oh, right, but he also, I don't believe it because Sean Penn always looks like he's having a good time being unhappy,
and he looks too arrogant.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that this character truly believes that everything is pointless, even though I know that that's what we're supposed to believe.
You know what the best part of the movie was?
Listening to him eat Chinese food.
I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
No, the best part of the movie was the closing credits, where it's just shots of New York City with the beautiful score and actually good credits font.
Oh, I don't remember that.
It looked like a really good collage. Like if that was just playing in a party, I would want to stay at that party.
To bring up my usual sexist comments, this is the movie of this collection that features a woman I do not want to see naked again. Sorry if you're listening.
Yeah, it's a Poor Things situation, isn't it?
Yeah, and we find out that Michael Pitt has aged into Sam Kinison. Congratulations. Not that I ever found him fuckable in any way, but yeah.
Yeah, it's quite disturbing looking at him. It It's like a Danny Bonaducci situation.
But also, that's the most ridiculous character in this movie for me as well, because we're expected to believe that he exists. I know that there are paramedics out there who like live by their own rules, and I understand why, but they push that character to an extreme that I find, again, it's a pretentious movie. I find.
I know this is New York City, and the U.S. has different rules than us, but here's a little anecdote from my work, and I won't give too many details because I exercise privacy, but we actually got a paramedic fired for doing like 1,000 times less than this guy.
Right. And I feel like that is what would happen.
Yeah.
From Wes Anderson, we have Asteroid City. I don't know what is there to say about this. Anderson has been here with Moonrise Kingdom and The French Dispatch. He's never won anything. What to say about Wes Anderson? There used to be a hunger in him to deal with his feelings. His early films were all about young men dealing with their feelings about older men, daddy issues. He seems to exercise that demon at some point, and then his films simply become aesthetic indulgences where his love of acetate book covers is far more important than the plot. This first happened for me in Moonrise Kingdom, which is a movie of his that everyone loves that I was completely indifferent to because I felt like it was Wes imitating Wes.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed some of his films since then, particularly his animated films, but this movie is a production design situation looking for a plot. It is one of his most beautiful films and one of his least satisfying in content. You have this incredible ensemble cast abandoned in what I assume is a artificial desert set with nothing to do, and nothing happens, and by nothing happens I mean like I just have no experience watching this movie at all.
Yeah, you're doing something wrong if you make something this beautiful and I feel nothing. And I wonder if that's why the movie got no attention from the guilds by the year's end, because you could argue that his movies always should. But if they don't elevate the material dramatically, what are they doing?
Yeah.
For how gorgeous the whole thing looks, I'm getting tired of his Russian doll narrative technique. He's done this in Dispatch, and he did it in Budapest as well.
Yeah.
The story within a story within a story.
Yeah, I find it really twee as well.
Yeah. And I know it's a cliche to call him twee, like, even though it is the easiest word to use, honestly. And I know it's easy to pick on him because, like we do with the other brat directors of the 90s. But here's the counterpoint to people who would leverage that critique to us. These are people who will wave their flag high that the Disney Corporation is casting every living actor in their multiverse franchises, and that is cynical. But then these people will make concessions to Wes Anderson, who casts all the greatest character actors to much worse effect than Julia Louis-Dreyfus in a Marvel movie.
Yes, absolutely. I also never expect Wes to return to movies like Rushmore or The Royal Tenenbaums, like movies that made me feel as well as be amazed by their aesthetic brilliance. I feel like that's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
And so I approach his movies feeling this way and just being glad to enjoy them. I don't think The French Dispatch is marvelous, but I enjoyed it. I think it's a lovely confection. I think that way about the Grand Budapest Hotel. So, given that my standard is there, if I come with that expectation and I'm still not having a good time, like, you're really phoning it in. And maybe you need to not make a movie every year. Maybe you need to slow it down.
Yeah. But what works for this movie, in all of his movies, you get one or two actors who make the most of the opportunity to go off-brand.
Yeah.
And in this movie, it's Tom Hanks and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, he also always makes movies where he's paying tribute to his favorite movies, but then he also does his own thing. The Darjeeling Limited takes a lot from like Satyajit Ray and Black Narcissus, and where it even cribs shots from it. But then you also have that brilliant story of the brothers, and you have Angelica Houston, and there's so much to that movie that I love.
Really?
Whereas in this one, it's like, all right, you love Ace in the Hole, and you love 50s sci-fi, and you have nothing else to offer.
Yeah, Stayed. It's one of the movies I rewatched to find out if I could like it more, and I actually fell asleep in the last third.
Yeah. From Senegal, we have Banel and Adama by Ramata-Toulaye C. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. This is a movie in the Pulaar language, which is the second most spoken language in Senegal. It's a movie I like to call Harry and Meghan, the movie. I really enjoyed this film. It is about she was married to the village chief who died, and she marries his brother as per their custom. Her husband does not want to become village chief. He wants his cousin, is it, to take over instead? But they say, no, you have to stick with tradition. And you feel like there's a kind of mad love, where they're madly in love with each other. There's a genuine passion because actually they were in love before she was forced to marry his brother. And so now they've ended up together. But she doesn't want to have children, even though she's supposed to give an heir. Like, she doesn't want anything except for the two. And neither of them want anything except for the two of them to be together and in love. They want to dig out the houses that are just outside the village that have been buried after a sandstorm. They want to dig them out so they can live there instead of living in the home that is appointed for the village chief. And this causes trouble with everybody in the village in terms of their wanting to break from tradition to indulge their own passions. And then hardship comes to the village in the form of a drought. Cattle are dying, and they believe that this is a punishment specifically for her behavior, because her husband starts to toe the line little by little as time goes on. This is a stunningly beautiful film, beautifully acted. The only thing that doesn't work for me is the ending is a bit too abrupt, and I didn't need it to resolve everything, but I needed a little bit more than what she gave us. But otherwise, I think this is a terrific film, and I believe a film debut or a feature film debut.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Beautiful movie. If there are any visual effects or recoloring in post-production, I cannot tell, including the flock of birds that flies over her. This would have been a more suitable Best Actress win than About Dry Grasses. And I love this movie working with this mythic weight without seeming to take a conservative or moral stance about what it is presenting. The fact that these characters are seemingly being punished for their choices to go against tradition, to pick a more individualist, more quote-unquote modern lifestyle, it feels like it's filmed in a disinterested way. Like, this is just how it is. And that reminds me a lot of, though a totally different movie, it reminds me of the ending of A Serious Man. Like, oh, yeah, okay. Because that's just how it goes. It's not about whether you think it's right or wrong. This is just life. It's very matter-of-fact about it. I love that the excavation of the houses doesn't get a lot of explaining. Yeah. I like what isn't explained. I highly recommend this movie. I'm excited to see what else this director does. I like what isn't explained, except we need just a little bit more of the main female character. There's something... She doesn't win Best Actress because she's on the wrong side of challenging, which is that I don't need her to be nice, but I need a little bit more information about what makes her tick in order to find her a little bit more sympathetic. There's something a bit too stubborn about her. You need more character motivation. Yes. And I don't mean that I need her to, behave better. I just mean I need just a tiny bit more information. There's an interview with the director on the DVD where she talks about how she wanted to make a challenging and complex female character, particularly for an African film, because we're used to African women in movies being victims in some way. Mm-hmm. Or the voice of a people, or something anthemic, and I really appreciate her wanting to do this. I think for the most part she achieved it, but I think there's just a little bit missing, and I think that she'll get it. I think she's going to make wonderful films in the future, so I don't really care that I see some flaws in this film. Yeah, I feel like this director's on the rise. From a director whose world I always enjoy, whether I like the film or not, is Alice Rohrwacher's La Chimera. Alice Rohrwacher first came on the scene for me when she won second place for The Wonders, Le Meraviglie, in 2014. I since went back and watched her earlier film, Corpo Celeste, which is amazing. After that, she made Happy as Lazzaro in 2018, which is a movie I didn't like as much as other people did, but I still appreciate it. She combines her levels of gritty realism with a sense of whimsy in a way that I really appreciate. She has a unique imagination, and I hope she keeps making film after film after film, because I just love imagining what she could possibly come up with next, because it's always something you didn't expect. In this case, a wonderful tale of a dowser is what Josh O'Connor's character is, who has these otherworldly powers to be able to locate ancient Etruscan treasures hidden deep beneath the earth. Although they're only going like 3 feet down, just so you know. Every time they dig something up, it's like right down there. A small
and if
point to
if
make.
it's been 1,000 years, there's been a lot more sediment building up over them. But anyway. But
Oh, look, I just found an ancient treasure.
Yeah. Well, it's like 2 digs and then like an empty cave. You know, like it's interesting. Anyway, he's in this Italian village doing this job. His emotional equilibrium is thrown off by his memories of a lost love, who is connected to my mother, Ingrid Bergman, because Isabella Rossellini is in this film.
Mm-hmm. With a really bad, straight out the bag Party City wig.
Yes, I think about that too. There are familiar human experiences, but they are all filtered through Rohrwacher's wholly unpredictable situations in this meditative, but also very funny, very thoughtful film in which Josh O'Connor, in a suit that he's been wearing for 3 days because he was in prison, looks even more delicious.
I know.
I can't imagine the last time a man that unbathed made me want to stick my nose in his armpit.
Yeah, I turned to you while we were watching this movie in theater and said, all of these guys have big, smelly dicks.
Yeah.
And
line them up.
And you just smiled back at me and you said, they sure do.
Yeah.
This was my intro to Josh O'Connor because I don't watch TV like everyone else.
Oh, my favorite show.
And I'd never seen God's Own Country either.
Oh, wonderful.
And about 4 weeks later, I saw Challengers. So my whole schema of Josh O'Connor is a guy who's cast in movies just to make me want to lick his loins.
Yeah, basically.
I love how Rohrwacher changes stylistic modes and textures, and she'll even change aspect ratio, but she'll never feel disjointed. The collage never feels too obvious. About the whimsy, I just don't know anybody else who's doing it like this without pissing me off. And it's a great counterpoint to About Dry Grasses, because in that movie, Anatolia is shown as this alien landscape that doesn't give a shit whether you live or die. But in this movie, Tuscany is portrayed as this lush playground where you can get up to no good without having to go that far. And I just really feel like I can explore her world and have fun in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a sensuality unlike any other filmmaker that I'm familiar with.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm excited to go back and watch her other movies. I liked Les Pupilles, and I'm excited that her sister is going to be one of the presenters at the Oscars this year.
That's so random, though.
She's got to be presenting international feature.
I know, but like, who knows her? I mean, I know her, but that's interesting. Anyway,
yeah.
I like her sister, Alba Rohrwacher, who is in every movie of hers,
including this one.
A very wonderful small part as a shady antiques dealer. Mm-hmm. From Jessica Hausner, we have Club Zero. She is a filmmaker who had been here with Little Joe in 2019, which won a Best Actress prize that you and I will talk about someday, and who made the film Amour Fou, which is what put me on her radar because I loved that film. I also like her film Lourdes. Many of her films deal with this idea of the dividing line between having faith and being controlled, spelled out quite obviously in this film, which is about Mia Wasikowska, who is basically what's the girl's name from Teacher's Lounge?
Leonie Benesch.
She is the Leonie Benesch that you can afford. Mia Wasikowska is talented, and I don't begrudge her any of the work, but there is a lack of star quality there that kind of bewilders me when I look at the amount of directors and projects that she's had access to.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if she's a Mara sister.
Yeah, because, like, it's okay that she's not pretty, but usually when you're not pretty, you are irresistible. You know what I mean? Because you have this, like, wild talent. And, like, I just don't find her special either way, but she doesn't bug me either.
Yeah, I'm about the same with you.
But she also bugged me more in this movie than in any other, because this is the most she's been a lead since, like, Jane Eyre of the movies I've seen her in. And also because this movie doesn't really, at the end of the day, work for me. I also fell asleep for about 45 minutes of it, and I regret nothing. She plays a professor who is teaching a class on controlled eating, where she's basically, like, coaxing these kids into eating disorders as a way of finding some kind of advancement or spiritual fulfillment. I mean, I really am jealous that these people are able to eat so little. I should be so lucky. But of course it ends up being something incredibly dangerous that the parents are really worried about. and then it goes like full drinking the Kool-Aid by the end. Hausner is not afraid of being disturbing, being there's a coldness to this film I appreciate. I just find in the end, I don't know that it has that much to say that's all that interesting, and I find it rather pretentious.
For a second outing in competition, I found this quite amateurish. It demonstrates the kind of mistakes I expect from a debut, like something by Emerald Fennell.
Yeah.
The style seems arbitrary, indecisive, needlessly kooky. The costumes and sets are uncanny beyond what the central conceit needs.
Yeah.
But I thought all the youth actors are having fun with the material. I think Mia Wasikowska can't really keep up with them, to be honest.
But it doesn't help that none of them are interesting. Nobody in this movie is interesting.
No. And
including her. Like, she should be a chilling portrait of masterful, underhanded control. Where she's convinced, you kind of get a sick glee out of enjoying how she's convincing people of one thing, but actually doing something else.
The one effective scene of this movie, I told you about it.
Oh, the one that upset you.
Yeah. I watch a lot of gore porn. I will probably get around to the Terrifier movies one day. I've seen Audition twice. I can basically watch surgery while I eat goulash.
Mm-hmm.
But when this girl takes a fork and eats her own vomit, I was so disturbed. And I actually thought it was expertly crafted and paced. And I just wanted the whole movie to have that much balls.
She also uses a faintly Japanesey score.
Hated it.
Well, she's done it before. She did it in Little Joe. So when the fact that that aspect of it was acclaimed at Cannes, it's just like, well, then you didn't see the last movie. And it feels like a tacky out affect now that she's done it twice.
Yeah, and it feels like an ad for insurance.
Yeah. Great small performances, though, by Elsa Zilberstein and Mathieu Demy.
I thought the same thing. And I wanted to have sex with a couple of those dads.
Well, the redhead was in a BGM. The redheaded dad. Yeah, he was in a BGM.
He stood out.
Yeah. All right. From the UK, we have the English language debut of Brazilian filmmaker Karim Aïnouz. This is a director I discovered on his first film, Madame Sata, which played at TIFF, and I thought was extraordinary. I've seen a few of his films since then. He's never made anything that I liked as much. But I found his English language debut raised more questions with me than it did declarative statements. I had a lot of questions about it. First of all, the font, which has nothing to do with the film, and which as soon as it came up, I thought, oh my God, Greg is going to be
enraged.
I need to know why Sam Riley's mustache looks like a Party City situation. His mustache and beard.
That beard, oh my God, it looked like a merkin.
I appreciate the efforts they make to make Jude Law look fat, particularly
Agreed.
On his like hands and feet. But I never believed he was fat for a second. He just doesn't have that vibe. He's like a lanky boy.
Sure, but as a counterpoint, I'll say, like Mike walked across the room and went, "Is that Jude Law? Wow, they really did make him look different." So
okay. So this is a movie about Henry VIII and it's about his final wife, who was Anne
Parr.
Anne Parr. I always get them mixed up because there's two Catherines and three Annes, three Catherines and two Annes. So
he has a type.
Yeah, she's the only wife that outlives him. It's another movie. It's kind of like the Elizabeth Corsage movie, which is that I don't understand why you're making a movie that is about history where you make everything up. And if it is because you want to tell this like feminist tale, pick another historical figure whose narrative suits your purposes, where you only have to move things around a little bit. This movie shows her being arrested, which never actually happened, and Henry VIII actually defended her to his entire court, who wanted to put her down for the Protestant beliefs that she was espousing. So they make this movie where he takes his paranoia out on her and then he puts her away in jail. But then she actually published quite a few things before he died, even though this movie makes it look like once he died, she was finally free to do it for the first time. Mm-hmm. She also never knew Anne Askew, who is portrayed by Princess Anne from The Crown, which is fine. They can make up this kind of relationship because I understand why that works narratively. But I also don't understand why this movie's called Firebrand, because she spends this entire movie bringing a plastic spoon to a gunfight. She is not a firebrand. She never defies anyone. She never even quietly defies anyone. She's just lucky to survive everything until she's free of them.
But you never once in the movie thought to yourself, you go, girl.
No, because I don't talk like that. Because I'm not a fucking idiot. And Bill, it doesn't also help that Alicia Vikander is no Kate Winslet. I mean, she's fine, but this is one of the blandest young lady superstars to win Best Supporting Babe in the last 40 years.
In the same year that Brie Larson won Best Actress.
Yeah.
Bill, this is a movie that dares to ask the question, what if notorious misogynist and serial wife killer Henry VIII didn't die of mysterious causes, but was in fact killed by someone who chose to lean in?
I don't know. If you're going to be this ahistorical, you can, but then lean into that too. Make it obvious, you know? It's nonsense.
And then it really blows its wad in the last 30 seconds where it cuts to Elizabeth II. I didn't even occur to me throughout the whole movie that it's Elizabeth II. Elizabeth the First. Elizabeth the First?
Elizabeth the First. Yeah.
She turns to the camera and gives that like eyebrow raise like, I'm gonna rock England. And then it cuts to a fucking PJ Harvey song from the 90s.
Yeah, but...
like, monarch feminism, fuck off.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's problematic about Elizabeth I, given the time that she lived in. She also did not defy her father's policies. She simply saw a way forward by letting go of religion, period. To the point that she actually oppressed religious people of either side.
Yeah.
You know that Elizabeth I is the reason why we have Shakespeare, and why we have the theater that we have, is because she banned... all theater before this was morality plays, religious plays, and she banned them, which is why people like Shakespeare came up with narrative plays and stories.
Why it's called Elizabethan. Yeah.
Right. So why is she the hero of the story? But also, just on a practical level, the fact that it ended with that shot of her, I'm like, why is this movie about her now? She's the firebrand?
It's Easter eggs. It honestly felt very contemporary. The level of winking it was doing at its audience.
Oh.
But hear what? For all,
it looks great though.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to say. No one is doing a terrible job, and by that I mean it held my attention. I was watching the whole thing.
Yeah.
It just looked like network TV.
Yes.
It looked like Mists of Avalon.
Yeah. I hate history for dumb people. Like, it really gets on my nerves. Like, be fully committed to being escapist, or do your research. With, again, concessions for narrative license. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about just taking a bunch of people in costume and filming them in any regular forest in, like, today's global warming always feels, like, anachronistic.
Yeah. All right, moving on. One of the best movies of the year is the Oscar-nominated documentary Four Daughters by Kaouther Ben Hania. She had been nominated for Best Foreign Language Film for Tunisia's first and so far only Oscar nom for The Man Who Sold His Skin. Mm-hmm. Which is a movie I really liked, even though it's not a great movie, but I liked it. And the guy in it was really sexy. This is a documentary drama hybrid, basically, where we have information, but we also have people reenacting information, doing it on screen, where they are actually actively participating in reenactments of their family life, centering around a Tunisian woman who has lost her two elder daughters to extremism and recreates the experiences of raising them with two actresses in their roles, while she plays herself and then sometimes is played by somebody else for the more delicate scenes. And there are the two younger girls appear as themselves, but also are played by other people sometimes, and then comment on the process. Mm-hmm. To read this in description is the kind of self-congratulatory gimmickry that I usually get really bored of and find really fucking pretentious and annoying. In this movie, it's done so exceptionally well. It's a fascinating film. It gets me deeper in touch with the humanity of these people rather than distancing them through this highly complicated process of telling this story. And it's a deeply intimate film. I think it's so good. And what I found particularly interesting is that a friend of mine saw it, a friend of mine who you've met, and she said, my God, that mother was a monster. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because I didn't think she was a monster, because being a little bit Middle Eastern myself, I just recognized her. I mean, my grandmother would never have called my mom and her sisters a bunch of whores the way that she does. And I have a feeling the word that she uses is probably not as severe in her language as it is in English.
Yeah.
But my grandmother, who was the sweetest woman in the world, would express her concern and adoration of her children through criticism well before she would do it sincerely. Mm-hmm. And so there was a level to which I understood how much this woman's experiences and her own particularly painful experience with men resulted in her being very hard on the outside, despite who she is on the inside.
And her love does come out. Like she in the scene when she says that to her daughters, it's this funny throwaway moment where I think they're putting on lipstick and doing nail polish. And this is a family of veil wearers. And she walks in the room. She knows she's outnumbered by them. They're all basically legal adults now. And she knows the level of power she now has in the democratic structure of her family. And she just off the cuff says, "You all look like a bunch of whores." And they're laughing about it.
It's also women caught between generations as well. It was a different world that she came up in than the one that she lives in. Because by comparison with a lot of places around it, Tunisia is much more liberal. Just the fact that she can make legal claims that she makes against and get a divorce is different from other parts of that corner of the world, as far as I know them through movies and documentaries. And you get the impression that it's hard for her to sort of reconcile how she feels about the fact that the younger generation have opportunities for things she didn't. Again, something that I very much well know. My mother is not from that long ago, but the world in which women don't have to get married and can get university educations is very far afield from the world that she grew up in. Mm-hmm. And she's happy that her daughter has it, but I'm sure she internally feels much more ambivalent about it than she's willing to admit.
And I sense in this mother figure, first of all, she's doing mental gymnastics I could never imagine doing. Like, she is acting alongside these two pretend daughters, and I find the commitment of the actual mother and two daughters to this narrative device so magnificent that they just totally dialed into it. But in her I feel this tension. Like, she wanted
feel the tension all night. Dun, 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 ooh, 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 dun, 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 dun.
Faggot. She wanted her to raise her daughters to be traditional and pious, and to marry the right men, and to raise families like she raised her families. She didn't want two of her daughters to become radicalized and join ISIS.
Yeah.
She just didn't want them to become loose and westernized. And she ended up she ends up with so much regret. And I feel
it's because she didn't, and I don't say this critically because, this is similar for all of us. She didn't recognize her own contradictions. She wanted her daughters to live these traditional lives the way she did, but she also spent their whole lives complaining about what this traditional life had brought her and the sorrow and the hardship of her husband and all that stuff. So she wasn't willing to admit the fact that secretly she didn't really want that for them. And so you can see how they are vulnerable to the influence that they are, given that she's not, facing that.
But I never thought, what a monster. I wanted to hold her hand.
Oh yeah, I never thought she was a monster either. All right, moving on. Homecoming by Catherine Corsini. This is the only movie in this collection that neither of us saw. I could not find it to save my life. I reached out to a friend of mine who saw it at the film festival, at the Cannes Film Festival, and he didn't have too much to say about it, but he pointed out that it is available in other countries, so my suspicion that it was wiped off the face of the earth was wrong, because this movie went into the festival with a lot of legal issues that followed it. There was issues of... I mean, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this because we didn't watch this film. But when the film was made, there are a lot of scenes involving minors. And there's one scene where these two, like a 15 and 17-year-old, caress each other. Anything involving minors in France in films has to be submitted to the Commission des Enfants du Spectacle and has to be approved by them. The scene was kind of improvised on the spot, and so it was not submitted to them. And the one concession that the producers and director made was to the fact that they did not do this box ticking for this, and that it was an administrative error that they very much regret. However, the actors involved had nothing bad to say about it. The scene did not involve them actually doing anything because the camera was trained on their faces. The actors themselves said that they were offered body doubles and intimacy coordinators. They said no to both because they did not feel it was necessary. However, since then, there were complaints filed by actresses in the film accusing Corsini of harassment and crew members of inappropriate gestures. There was an actress who was cast in a role who said she was harassed by a dance coach, and that when she told Corsini about it, she was fired. Corsini said that she was replaced because she wasn't right for the role. The actress also said that she was offered 2,500 euros to not talk about it. There was an actress who said that a stuntman touched her buttocks during filming. A social worker intervened, and the actress and her mother declined to press charges, and that she filmed during the school year and was not attended either by her parent or a guardian during shooting. The COVID-19 specialist quit during filming of this movie. A casting assistant in charge of extras quit. A grip and a second assistant director quit due to allegedly repeated humiliations. And then a letter was signed by 16 crew members and 2 of the actresses about the working conditions that was read to Catherine Corsini in person 10 days before the end of filming. The 2 actresses claim that their scenes were cut in retaliation for their being a part of this, although again, Corsini said that their scenes were cut for dramatic reasons. And also that they were cut because she wanted to cut back on working hours because that was the main concern from the crew. And those actresses said that they requested an intimacy coordinator without success. So this movie is a mess.
Wow.
In terms of its... And then I get the impression it didn't make that much of an impact as a finished product. So who knows? But I could not find it legally, illegally, DVD, streaming, nothing. I could not find this movie.
And do you have any history with this director up to date?
Just one film. She directed a movie called Partir, Leaving, with Kristen Scott Thomas, that I thought was okay.
Okay.
I saw it at TIFF years ago.
Okay. Well, maybe one day we'll watch it.
Yeah. Next. From Marco Bellocchio, who's probably the most senior member in the competition this year. This man dates back to the 60s.
Yeah.
With his film Kidnapped.
Rapito. Rapito.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds convincing. His first time at Cannes was in 1980 with A Leap in the Dark, but I've seen movies of his. I'm pretty sure Cina e Vicina is his. I think Fists in the Pocket is his. Anyway, this is an interesting movie for us to be talking so soon after we did The Leopard, because it also touches on the Risorgimento, which is this very interesting case of papal authorities arriving at the home of a prominent Jewish family, telling them that their 6-year-old boy is going to be taken into custody because the woman who used to work as a maid in their house claims that while the boy was ill, she baptized him because she was afraid he was going to die. And that his being baptized as a baby instantly makes him no longer Jewish and a member of the Catholic faith. So, to make a long story short, he is taken into Vatican City and raised by priests. And that this is considered the growing outrage over this case is one of the key things that leads to the Risorgimento, which is the disbanding of papal state authority and the unification of Italy. This
is our other juicy TV movie in the list.
Yes, it is a gorgeously filmed movie that I did not find boring. I like its theme. The fact that it's basically just about the fact that history cannot move in any other direction but forward, and that abusive regimes will always be the cause of their own undoing. And that's really interesting, but I did find that a lot of the interpersonal drama felt a little bit like cheap soap opera.
Yeah, and you never really tap into the psyche of this conflicted Jewish boy as he grows up in the Catholic faith.
Yeah.
But you can see the money on the screen, and you can tell because the closing credits are 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
But I recommend this one to the Conclave Hive.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of the church stuff is like high drama.
It's polished. It's a polished movie. It's not amateurish in any way. It's just not deep. It doesn't hit me as deep as this story should.
Totally. I would compare it to a miniseries where you get to the last episode and you go, that's it. You've binged this far to get to something anticlimactic.
Yeah. Although once things really got in motion, I knew that he was never going to go home again, and I knew that he was going to drink the Kool-Aid. I knew he was just not going to be one of them anymore, and that they would just have to let him go.
But that can still be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A really fascinating experience for me in this competition was watching Catherine Breillat's Last Summer, which actually was theatrically released in 2024 and was on Film Comments. Is it in their top 10, was it not?
Yeah, it was their number 8.
Yeah. I think Breillat is one of the stupidest filmmakers working. Her sense of eroticism is outrageousness pretending to be provocative.
Yeah.
And
bratty.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do appreciate her. I see her in interviews and I really appreciate her. And I also love this idea of, she comes across as like this lovely middle-class woman who insists on being really precise and evocative about her sexual fantasies. This is a woman who started publishing novels as a young woman and was raked across the coals by French society for having the audacity to write dirty books when she's supposed to be a nice French girl. And I do appreciate that about her. But I do find that the end result is rather tawdry, pretending to be classy.
Yeah.
However, even a blind chicken can find a peck of corn now and then, as Lyle Lovett's grandmother once said. I do enjoy The Last Mistress, and I think Last Summer is a really, really good movie.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's audacious.
Oh, yeah.
I think Lea Drucker is fantastic in it. I love the ending. I love that this movie doubles down in the ending. Even though it's about a completely disgusting situation. This woman has sex with her stepson and can't stop. And unlike a Hollywood movie in which a teenage stepson would be played by a 28-year-old hottie, they have an actual drooling teenager playing her stepson. He is disgusting. Yeah. He is like Jesse Eisenberg's Substance Took the Substance. and I say this by meaning that like teenagers are gross, and that the appeal for people who fuck minors is the fact that they are unformed, and that there's I appreciate that this movie has the audacity to insist that she's still good at her job despite this incredibly problematic relationship, and that she fights to hold on to her life despite the fact that she leaves herself vulnerable to being ruined, and that we find like that the young man is ruined by his own hot-headed teenage confidence, and that his spirit is broken. Basically, she's breaking a wild horse. Yeah. And that we're told that that's just life, so get over it. I was fascinated by how much this film held me, given that I never approach a Breillat film expecting to like it.
Bill, I agree with everything you just said. I really love the sober style with which the film is made. I know naturalism is not the same as realism, but it doesn't feel embellished either. The few soundtrack choices, I think it's like a Sonic Youth track and some original Kim Gordon music. They only add as much flavor as a bay leaf. They don't manipulate a scene. And I think that works to the effect of letting the dramatic action do its thing and breathe. And it shows that she trusts Drucker to carry us along. And she really feels complex. I never feel like she's evil, but I do think she's stupid. I think she lacks self-knowledge to know she's not going to be able to pull this thing off. She thinks that she can fuck this kid once and then tell him, look, we can never do this again. And then, shocking, we find out he's actually an immature 19-year-old who doesn't...
Is he 19? I think he's like 16, isn't he?
Oh, I read 19. Maybe I just projected right. 19 on him because that's the
gross,
actor.
By the way.
Yeah, and...
I think he's 16 because it's not illegal if he's 19.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't
it's
even
just problematic for the family, but like she's in legal trouble with him.
Oh, okay. So I was I thought the scandal was the incest more than
no, because I don't think you would be brought before a judge for having sex with a stepson.
You're right. No. You're right. Absolutely. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm basing my research on FamilyDick.com videos, but
I'm reminded of this line from Dan Savage in Savage Love, where he talks about if you're going to date younger, extremely younger, and he's not recommending people ever do that with minors, but he means even just if you're in your 40s dating somebody in your 20s, you need to abide the campsite rule, which is you leave it better than you found it.
Yeah.
And she takes somebody who is like in the most hormonal, emotionally unstable part of his adolescence, and thinks she can get hers out of it without any consideration of how it's going to fuck him up. And the movie is so brazen as to let us see him from her perspective, where he reacts petulantly and annoyingly. But of course he would. But I think it's cool to let us see him from her perspective that way. I think that makes the movie daring and smart.
Yes, and one of the things it accomplishes, which really amazes me, usually films about problematic sexual relationships can't help but indulge us in fetishizing the sex.
Yeah.
And the sex in this movie, while you can tell they're having a good time, but it's not erotic for us to watch it. I didn't find it sexy. Even though I got why they found it sexy.
Yeah, it never feels erotic for us.
Yeah.
It's based on a movie called The Queen of Hearts, I believe, a Danish film.
Oh, okay.
I hope I got those titles right. I found this out listening to some old Cannes coverage. And it sounds like the original movie is more moralizing in its ending, and this one leaves things more ambiguous.
Because that's not Breillat. And that's one thing I do appreciate about her. She's not a moralizer. She's about the fact that we're human, and we actually do want these things, so we have to stop pretending we're not. She does, however, indulge in her usual silly thing of, like, women whispering while fucking, you know, which I find annoying. Also, the French and their obsession with guttural saliva noises is something I will never fucking understand. They need that microphone right up close to your nostril every time you take a sip of water.
Every time, though, she walks into a room in an ivory sheath dress, I just know we can't trust her.
When I think of Petite Maman, all I can think of is that the whole movie is just kids sipping from cups for 2 hours.
I don't want to talk about that movie, Bill.
Yeah, I know.
I just don't want to talk about it. The only thing I would say about this movie is that it leads us perfectly into our next title.
Yes, it certainly does. And that was last summer. Hi, Frasier. All right. And that next movie is May December by Todd Haynes. This is a film that premiered at Cannes, and Netflix picked it up to turn it into an award winner, and they didn't quite make it. They got one screenplay nomination out of it by the end of the year, despite all the raves for the performances, particularly the fact that people were predicting Charles Melton to win Best Supporting Actor for it.
Or at least get a nomination.
Yeah, and he did not. This movie is Haynes' fourth try at the Palm after Velvet Goldmine, Carol, which won Best Actress, and Wonderstruck, which you can hear us talk about a couple episodes ago. Netflix acquired it for $11 million.
I think it was the biggest acquisition.
Probably. I mean, and why not? It's got huge stars, and it's excellent. And Todd Haynes' movies usually hit me the minute I'm watching them. I know that they're brilliant as soon as I watch them. May December is a film that is really a really memorable experience for me because when it was over, I thought, yeah, that was good. And then by the end of the day, I realized I was devastated. It's a movie that percolated in my brain for a couple hours after I watched it. And then suddenly I was like, oh my God, that movie was brilliant. It's
a grower, not a shower.
Yeah, it is a subtly campy take on the Mary Kay Letourneau situation. Of course, the real life grade school teacher who married her 11-year-old student and stayed with him, had kids with him. They actually did get divorced, but it was because he wanted to start a weed business, and you can't do that if you're married to a felon, and she had been to prison at that point. But they did stay together, and then she died quite surprisingly young. And of course, her name has become a sort of joke in making fun of that kind of relationship. And what this movie does is take place in a world that is interested but also exploiting their relationship. Natalie Portman plays an actress who's going to make a movie about them, and so she comes to live with the real people in order to explore them. God, there's so much you can say about this film. Mm-hmm. What we find out in the end is that all art is a failure. We're all obsessed with this idea of art as representation and the importance of it, but in the end, art cannot represent life. Natalie Portman, her character is genuinely interested in representing these people faithfully and researching them carefully. And then once she's in the film that she eventually makes, it's this like tawdry, shitty TV movie that makes you wonder why she bothered.
Totally.
And all of these things are handled by Todd Haynes at his finest as a director of multiple tones and layers, which is that there is a level of camp to this film. There's also a level of deep sympathy, which is camp at its finest, really, which is that when it makes you feel strongly, despite the fact that the aesthetics are unintentionally outrageous, and gets these razor-sharp performances from these actors, who I did not expect to be nominated for Academy Awards, because it's the kind of acting that I don't find Academy voters can really put their finger on and understand as great acting, because you can't, pick an accent or a mad scene or a crying scene or whatever.
Well, and kids can identify with them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have an entry point into their choices.
Yeah, and they are resolute about that in this film. They are determined not to be people that you can identify. They are living high behind their walls. They have their protection for their reason. They truly believe that they are all in consensual situations. but they're not quite aware of how much they're not. Especially him.
I rewatched this movie for this pod, and as I predicted, it was even better the second time around.
Mm-hmm.
I love when that happens. I love when that happens with his movies. It's honestly my choice for Best Director because I get stuck wondering where Best Director ranks in elite status between the Grand Prix and the jury prize.
Sure.
And for me, it's higher than a jury, but it's held. I think its distinction should be reserved for a movie that makes me go, no one else could do that, and I don't think anybody could pull off this movie the way Haynes did without it seeming staid or pat or ingratiating. I love the way that he juggles the sympathetic and the tragic with the draggy and trashy elements. Like we can get these really heartfelt moments from Julianne Moore and Charles Melton alongside this monologue that Natalie Portman says to the camera as she's reciting that letter the Julianne Moore character wrote. I could totally have seen Leah Drucker winning Best Actress. I could also have seen a Voltaire-style Best Actress win for Julianne and Natalie. If this jury wanted to figure out how to slot them in, and I'm kind of stunned that they didn't, because this movie is so audacious and singular. I really appreciate how Haynes never is out to portray Moore or Melton as victims of the media, which is personified by Natalie Portman.
In her finest ever performance.
Oh, I'm a total Portman convert after this movie, especially since she brought the screenplay to Haynes. Yeah. That's mind-blowing to me. No, he just portrays them as people who just want to get past something. Mm-hmm. Like they just want to move on with their lives. And I find that so interesting. It's in his list of 3 to 4 to 5 5-star movies, if you include Mare of Easttown, Mildred Pierce in there.
Those are not the same thing, despite
Those
the
are not
Kate
the
Winslet
same
connection.
thing.
Yeah, and I also think that it did not win awards from the jury because this movie, I feel like half the people who watch it get it the way we do, or see it the way we do, I should say. I don't want to sound that snobby. And I think for half the people, it either goes over their head or they just don't care about what it's doing beyond what you see. And I would not be surprised if the jury was a combination of those people, and that's why. Just going to blame Brie Larson.
Well, I would also blame Östlund, because if you think back to The Square, he can never inject any feeling or real human psychology into his satire. So he probably looks at something like this and just thinks he's watching a sappy soap opera, not realizing this movie is doing a lot more satirically than he's ever pulled off.
Yeah. Speaking of double palmers, we have Ken Loach in this festival, the most veteran of the... well, I already said that already. I guess the person who's been here the most, bringing his most recent, according to him, his last film, The Old Oak. He's been at the festival since Looks and Smiles in 1981, although he got his career underway in the late 60s. I particularly love The Angel's Share and The Wind That Shakes the Barley. I really enjoy Looking for Eric. Ken Loach is hit and miss. He's another director where it's like, I don't care if I don't love one of his movies because he's going to make another one in about 10 minutes. He is an interesting filmmaker I think every time he comes up, I'm just going to make the same comments about him, which is, he's a very socially conscious filmmaker who puts a very socially conscious theme into a plot that is basically his version of a fairy tale or a rom-com or, something genre that he turns on its ear. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it is not. In this case, we have the tale of citizens of an economically depressed English village who are pissed off when Syrian refugees are given homes and assistance, while many of them can't put food on the table. And as is often the case, instead of it inspiring people to understand the contradictions in the way their government is running them, they instead turn on the others, basically the outsiders. Mm-hmm. And one owner of a local pub starts a kitchen in his back room, much like the one his parents ran during a miners' strike many, many years earlier. There's a lot of lovely moments in this film. I love the little boy who goes into the kitchen and the Syrian woman helps him to eat in secret so that no one can see. Yeah. Because these people just don't have food in their fridges. It's a reconfiguring of Carla's song, which is also written by Paul Laverty for Ken Loach. brought to modern times. And all the dramatic conflicts are ones that I could predict, but the characters have a rich life to them, and the emotional effect is powerful, despite the fact that there is zero subtlety to this movie and zero surprise.
Yeah, it's a movie that's so pre-digested, you almost feel like there's no conflict in it at all.
Yeah, I knew what was going to happen to that dog.
Which is the only part of the movie that doesn't work. The movie works whenever it's in the pub and centered in the conflict between the newcomers and the disenfranchised miners, former miners. It takes place in a village in the pits, what were the pits, and it is really well observed in that or it's really well informed, I should say, about how the disenfranchised under global capitalism turn first towards immigrants and the people worse off than them, which is usually drug users. I think it does a really good job conveying that, and I don't think it ever goes saccharine, but it is earnest and it is sincere and it's quite sweet. And I went to see it on an afternoon by myself, and I felt totally fine that I spent $14 to see it. I felt like I just went downtown to meet friends for coffee. It was that kind of fulfilling experience.
Yeah.
And I believe you when you've seen more Loach than me. I believe you. There's a lot of better Loach ahead for me, especially as we do more competitions. I still enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it too, but I also understand why he feels done with filmmaking, because it's like, you have nothing new to say. And that's
He's
okay.
pushing 90.
Yeah. And also, I also understand this feeling of, yeah, I'm still making the same movie, but we still have the same problems, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a perfectly legitimate defense. I would also say that sometimes his movies have the tone, and sometimes he has this tone in person too, of seeming to think that he's the first person to think of the things that he talks about, which can be a little bit annoying, but he's not a grand offender in this way. And, you know, I like him more often than I don't, so it's fine.
Yeah, and that's just growing up in the 30s. By the time you're the age you are now, you think you can talk with authority about things that actually everybody else knows about.
Yeah. And then we have Wang Bing's Youth Spring, the first part of a trilogy. I believe the other two have already come out.
Well, I keep looking to see if they're coming out this year, and there's no North American
right, but they played
release.
Film festivals, like they have been filmed and made.
Yeah.
This is a documentary that is 4 hours long. It is about the 300,000 or so migrant workers in the town of, is it Jili? Is that how you say it? A town in China that is mainly focused around the garment industry.
It's actually a number of towns inside one province.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And filmed from 2014 to 2019, observational documentary without narration or any sort of guiding, there's no voice telling you what to think of things or whatever. It's just watching these people in their work lives, their personal lives. This movie is not mesmerizing, but I can't say that I watched it all in one sitting and it went by. You know what I mean? It's not up there with my favorite Chinese movies. Like, it's not up there with Jia Zhangke for me. Mm-hmm. But I really liked it. I will happily watch the other parts. I really appreciated what I saw. The only thing I can say is that nothing surprised me, because it's something that I feel like I already know a lot about, and I don't know that it showed me anything different. But I appreciated the generosity of it, and how much I loved a lot of the people that I was watching in it. But how cold is that country? Those people are always wearing thick coats, even when they're inside.
Yeah, I really
know it's because they're not heating those buildings, those terrible cinder block apartments that they're all living in, but still.
Yeah, that's true. I adore this movie. I think this is... You can tell me this is not molds breaking. You can tell me it's not... it isn't a new step in the documentary film form. And I would relent, but I love it. I love how big it is. I love that it takes that big swing and it pulls it off, because just like you, I feel the time just going by, and it feels very eventful, and it works as a kind of ambient cinema. I have to say, I had a real pleasure watching it at the Hot Dog Cinema, because I got to experience it all supersize. Mm-hmm. I got to feel immersed in the sounds of sewing machines and this jaundiced interior lighting. and hearing all of these Mandarin pop tunes that these youths are singing along to, and then hearing all of their pranks on each other and their petty little fights. And it created this feeling, the exciting feeling of walking around a new neighborhood in a new city.
Yeah.
And in that, it reminds me a lot of Weisman. I love that it doesn't ever stoop to pitying its subjects. It would be really easy to do that when making a movie about labor. The director, it really feels like the director and his photographer, he's working with a new photographer for this one, whereas he did his own photography for West of the Tracks. It really feels like he earned trust, and he really got in there with these people, including their employers, for these 5 years.
There's a lot of intimate moments in this film. And I should say, I don't mind that it's not mesmerizing. I kind of like the fact that it's not all like the hottest moments that he filmed.
Totally.
And that you are just, like you said, immersed in just watching this world unfold in front of you.
I actually was kind of mesmerized by the scenes of the workers negotiating their wages. Because I have this shallow notion that in this part of the world, their labor is low value. But there are these moments where they bark like they know they've got bargaining power. And they're not always successful, but sometimes they are. Sometimes they get their wage increase.
But their wage is based on production. It's not based on hours, right? Like they get paid by the piece, and that's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. And I just need to shout out to my friend Daniel McIntyre. He's the one who went with you and I to see A Bread Factory, who is one of my very few friends, you included, who, when I ask, want to go see a 3.5-hour observational documentary about youth garment workers in China, just says back, sure, who needs their legs anymore?
I disagree with this classification of me as your friend, but go on.
This movie is so big and brazen and handsome and has really good font. I'm quite stunned it's not in the awards roster. It would have been my Grand Prix.
All right, before we conclude, we have to do our Dan de Deur, our worst in show. And we have finally got into the habit of remembering to save this for last. And this year, you and I have the same one. So, I mean, really, is it even a question? Asphalt City might have come the closest, but it was hands down going to be this selection 20 minutes in. And this is A Brighter Tomorrow by Nanni Moretti. It breaks my heart to choose Nanni Moretti as the worst in show. Yeah. As I have discussed before, I love him madly. He is
beautiful.
Yeah, even as an old man, he's still upright and handsome. But he gives a performance in this film that made me wonder if he was having a stroke. He is revisiting aspects of previous films, touching on them quite directly. His concerns about the way politics are going, the way the film industry is going. Specifically in this case, he's playing a filmmaker who is making a movie about the Italian Communist Party, centered around the fact that that party broke from Soviet Russia very early on. Communism, for all its popularity in the 30s, really falls in favor in the 40s and 50s, in part because of the paranoia in post-war prosperity, but also because once everyone knew what Stalin was up to, they were very disillusioned about it as an ideal. And the Italians' way of dealing with this, as we learned from this film, is to simply hold to the principles but break from the beliefs of Warsaw Pact countries, because they basically did not want to become a police state like the other places did. Yeah. Lovely. But the way it's borne out in this film is messy, undercooked, confused. This movie feels like he was rewriting it as he went along, and that he was forced to re-edit things, cut things out, add things in. It doesn't come together cohesively in any way. No. He has a lot of familiar actors that he's worked with before who all seem confused. I love that he works with Margherita Bui so much in his movies, because I love her so much. But even she doesn't seem to know what she's doing.
She the one playing his wife?
Yeah. She's also in his film Mia Madre. She was in the movie of his that we did for 2021 that you didn't see, called 3 Floors, which is also a bad movie, but a highly watchable, enjoyable bad movie. Whilst this movie, I suffered getting through it. There are whimsical musical numbers that are absolute trash. I mean, this movie is just, it's a stinker. It is bad. This is the 9th time that he is selected for Cannes. He has actually had his movies in the competition every time since Caro Diario, his big breakthrough in the early 90s. And it also features a Palme winner in the film when they're watching Dolce Vita, which is something that I like to look out for. So, Greg, tell us what you think.
And it has a Best Director winner in it, Mathieu Amalric.
That's right.
Nothing.
Whose teeth are so yellow, it blew my mind.
And he still gets tail because a French smoker is fuckable for life.
I don't think it's just that he's a smoker. I think it's partly because everyone gets their teeth bleached now, so when someone has normal teeth, they look green by comparison. I think it's also the way he's lit. But anyway. Or they did it on purpose for him in this film. I don't know. Anyway, go on.
Not just the worst movie of this competition, one of the worst movies I'd seen in months, quite honestly. Yeah. By the time we see all of the cast spinning in circles like they're in a senior's drop-in, I just want to stick my head in the oven. And even Moretti, who I find so sexy in La Seconda Volta, in this movie, he's giving canned fish energy. He's John Turturro.
Yeah. There's no one less sexy than John Turturro, not in the whole world.
It never decides what it wants to be, tonally or generically. It never feels like the work of an established and well-practiced auteur. And then what is the conflict? He doesn't know what to do with his own movie, and so he projects onto the movie his wife is producing. That's just a non-funny episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, yeah. The whole, making them stand still for a whole day or whatever it is that he does.
Yeah. Stinky. So stinky.
Stinky.
And that was A Brighter Tomorrow. Hey, Frasier.
I need you to be precise. Tell me everything.
Yes.
I don't know what happened. I think he fell off that third floor. The window's open.
The autopsy report is inconclusive. An accidental fall is going to be hard for us to defend.
The Palme d'Or went to Anatomie d'un Chute, Anatomy of a Fall, by Justine Triet, who had been at the festival one time before with Sybil, which is a movie I started and I never finished, and not because I didn't like it. Something got in the way, and I really do want to watch it. It also has Sandra Hüller and Benedetta in it, and Adele Exarchopoulos, who I adore.
And who I cannot pronounce.
Yep. This is the third woman to win the Palme d'Or, the second one completely on her own. She gave an acceptance speech that was very critical of the French government's cultural policies and its violent response to the pension reform demonstrations. And people believe that this is the reason why this film was not selected for the Oscars submission from France. They chose The Taste of Things instead. I actually don't think that that's true. I think they were worried that Anatomy of a Fall might get disqualified for the fact that too much of it is in English.
Well, and I think they just picked the better movie.
I think that too, but it wasn't the more celebrated movie.
Right.
And she did not. Justine Triet gives me the impression that maybe she's just not good at being famous, because I do like her, but she didn't win points for me when someone posted their anger that they'd chosen The Boring Taste of Things over this, and then she shared it on Instagram.
Yeah.
I think it's something she did quickly and carelessly, and I don't think it was her being malicious, but it didn't score highly for me.
It's below her.
Yeah. And also against Academy rules. But I really do like this film very much. A good courtroom drama. There's just nothing, that hits to the last drop better. Mm-hmm. An exploration of Sandra Hüller's natural unlikability and finding the contradictions within it and the humanity within it is something I'm there for as well. She's very German, right? She's very hard-edged. She's mad at you if you don't respect the line, if you don't respect the cue. But there's a vulnerable person under there, and we get to explore all of that. Also, I talked about this in the Oscar episode we did last year, because of course this film went on to Oscar glory. It won Best Original Screenplay. It was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director and Best Actress. But people were really furious that Barbie was nominated for Best Picture and not for Best Director, and that was an abandonment of the feminist principles that movie was espousing, and that the Academy clearly doesn't get women. They hate women's stories, blah, blah, blah.
Despite that they've nominated Gerwig twice before.
Well, yeah, and that she was nominated for a screenplay award, which she said was fine by her. But of course, we only believe women when they say something bad. When women say that they're fine, we don't believe them. Anyway, but also, this was a very American response, because the Academy did nominate a woman for Best Director who made a film about the fact that a woman finds herself in court fighting for her life because she's not a nice lady.
Yeah.
The movie begins with her husband dying. He falls from the balcony of their Alpine house that is built with floor-to-ceiling windows right next to a mountain, and her child is blind. This woman does not strike me as wise. But anyway.
No. They had a tape system.
And it is determined by the forensics investigation of his fall and the way the blood spatters, the way he hit, blah, 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 that it's possible that he was pushed. And this means that she is brought into court where their marriage is put on trial. You know, was there conflict between them? Did she hate her husband? Is there motive, basically? The prosecuting lawyer is played by the guy from BPM.
What a
who is
bitch.
a whiny brat. One of her lawyers is the mom from BPM as well.
Oh yeah.
And he's just a wonderful whiny bitch who, I mean, this movie is a fascinating exploration of the French court system, which is completely different from the way I know courts to be from American movies. Mm-hmm. Particularly the style of procedure that they do where everyone can just talk when they need to talk. And all this exploration of like the legal importance placed on her not being a nice enough woman. She's not nice enough about being more successful than her husband. She's not understanding enough about his feelings of his own failure. And you have these witnesses like the psychiatrist who is like really mad at her for not being nice to his patient. You know, these whiny men who go on the stand. So, like, this movie is espousing the feminist principles that you want. It's just not Barbie.
Yeah. It's not pop. It's not pop feminism.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me about the psychiatrist scene. That I'll return to that because it hits on a point I wanted to make. First of all, this movie is part of a sort of trio of movies that come out and make a splash in North America off the festival circuit that show how contrasting the French court system is, including Saint-Omer from the year before and the Goldman case, which I've not yet seen. And what you get is not people make their testimonies and there's a cross-examination, but actually people are just allowed to argue back and forth and shoot the shit, it would seem.
It's the inheritance of the French Revolution, basically, which is that nobody is ignored. Everyone gets to have their liberté, égalité, fraternité.
And it's quite astonishing to the point of almost disbelief, but it also makes for really good drama.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to see the courtroom procedural, this genre that we love so much and has been done so well for decades in this part of the world, from that part of the world.
Aided by the fact that the defendant is not a natural French speaker. She more or less understands it. But she constantly talks about her fight with her husband being in English because that's their neutral ground, because she's a German speaker, he's a French speaker, and everyone understands each other's languages, but everyone is not fully immersed in each other's languages, and that creates an extra tension in the courtroom.
And just reinforces the point that it's really her personality that's on trial. Is she likable? And that is the central feminist conceit.
Yeah.
It's fitting for a movie about how we never totally know the people we're closest to, that my relationship to this movie and my memory of it grows askew and murky as time goes on, because when I returned to it for a second viewing, it felt fresh and like I was watching it with a new lens, to the point where I totally forgotten details of it, including how stylistically expert it was. Like that, I had lost some of that. The shot of the dog from the dog's height walking through the crime scene right after his death. The shot of Sandra standing in the shadows of the attic from the vantage point of her lawyer standing by the balcony, so that we can imagine her shoving her husband. And then the textual flourishes in the mixed media, like the CGI of the body falling in the courtroom.
Yes.
And the inclusion of the media coverage, bringing visual interest of frames within frames.
Yeah, it's a movie that works in the micro and the macro. I love its big themes, but I love its small moments as well, its details.
Yeah, and the way that we see the media frenzy invade this otherwise peaceful hillside home.
Built at the edge of a mountain. Anyway, go on.
You know, a home for any blind child.
Yeah.
And then we really need to talk about Sandra. I've loved this woman and been waiting for her to come back again since Tony Erdmann.
I've known her actually since Requiem in 2006, but yeah, I think she's great, and she's a perfect choice for this movie because, again, it's a great movie about gray area. Yeah. This is a movie about the fact that all human interaction is dangerous, and we need to stop thinking that we can always litigate it in post because there's so much going on. She probably didn't kill her husband, but she probably was mad at him. Their marriage was dead, but she also didn't hate him. She did pity him, but she also reviled him for her pity for him, and he had mixed feelings about her. Sandra Hüller is a great person to represent this because, again, she is so instantly friendly and likable, but also instantly off-putting as well in many ways. Yeah. She's fascinating. She is complex.
She has a behavioral pristineness that is suspicious.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's putting it... I think we need to end the episode. I think that puts it exactly right. I love when he says to her, you need to start seeing yourself the way other people see you.
Yeah.
That is important because what's on trial is not the truth.
And I just love her ability to work in different modes. I know we know by now she is an heir to the Huppert style of acting, let's just say.
Sure.
Rising from her generation, from performances like Tony Erdmann to The Zone of Interest to Anatomy of a Fall now, we know that this is somebody who will chop off her finger for the art. But in this movie, we believe her character in court saying, look, people are more than just what you get in recordings and what is in your medical records.
Yeah.
People are complex and we are sometimes awful to each other, but we can still love each other. And it is totally convincing. She's telling us, I know how I come off right now. I know how my novels make me look. I know how this recording makes me look. But believe me that I loved my husband, even as I sometimes hated him.
But we also know that telling the truth isn't as simple as we think it is, even though we always think it's simple when we're telling other people to do it. When they're doing that testimony prep scene and she's prepping to talk about what happened, but he's like, no, don't use that word. Don't say that word. Yeah. Don't say it that way. She's telling the truth, but telling the truth is not that simple.
Well, and he says to her, she says, I don't think he killed himself. And he said, and that's not going to win. So then she actually has to, this is sort of akin to the concept of gaslighting. She actually dials in completely to the argument and the belief that he killed himself in court. You know, when you tell a lie long enough that you start to believe it?
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, she believes he ended his own life. And so does her son.
That happens a lot, probably, in court trials where a witness's or the character of the defendant is in question, which is that you sort of solidify yourself around a certain narrative about yourself, even though the truth is a lot grayer and more complex than that.
Yeah, well, because it has to be encaseable in a courtroom.
Yeah,
I think this movie deserved the screenplay awards that it won at the Oscars and the Golden Globes, and I think the BAFTAs, and I think picking up the screenplay award at Cannes would have also made sense. The only other movie I think that has a screenplay as compelling is probably May December or Last Summer.
Yeah.
And I say that because this movie has so many implausibilities that it commits to and goes in so full hog.
Which enrich it, I find. Because I do wonder, does the prosecutor need to be that much of a whiny bitch? Like, are there lawyers who really work that hard in a courtroom?
Mike said the same thing. And is there any doctor who believes their patient that much?
Yeah, where he takes it personally. It's like, yeah, but she was really mean to him. Like, was he your friend? I was expecting them to reveal that like they had a prior relationship or something. Also, you pointed this out from the first time that we saw it. This child goes through this experiment of poisoning his dog to see the result. One of the things I love about the way the kid is used in this movie, though, is that you think he's going to be set up to like reveal the one magical thing that's going to undo all of this or change all of this, and he doesn't. He's struggling to get through this life just like everybody else, and that he doesn't have like a mystical wisdom that nobody else has. The dog thing is a bit much. Also, I don't know if they fully convince me of the justification for the fact that recording exists of their conversation either. They do a better job of that than with the other eccentricities in the plot. But I do think that they all make things richer. I think this movie is extremely well charted in the way it builds. I think that scene where they're smoking in the snow together is exactly where it needs to be in terms of giving us a break from the tension. I love Swan Arlo, who plays her lawyer. He got a lot of attention for this film, although he's already very famous in France. And he's super, super cute.
He's a cutie. Also, for those who didn't pick it up, the court-appointed guardian who is hired to stay at their home and make sure that...
He's a singer.
It's Jenny Beth from Savages, who are this, like, Susie and the Banshees, PJ Harvey kind of band. They're really good.
I love her in this film, and she's also the primary example for me of how much I love the characters in this movie, and that nobody is a good or a bad person.
Yeah.
It's not just Sandra who is complex. Nobody is out to ruin her. They like, even though the prosecutor really does push the limit, but like she as the court she as the court-appointed liaison, I guess, for the minor involved in this case, is really interested in doing her job well. She's not snotty or she's not a pill, basically, even though you're braced for that. because this is not a movie questioning the judicial details. It's looking at human failures, basically, and the fact that we're all just out there breaking each other's hearts all the time. The one thing I will say, though, about this movie is that it's a reminder to make sure that there's cool music on when you die, because, you know, this reggae remix of PIMP is cool, but I worry that I'm going to expire to the sounds of, like, one of my dad's favorite old Greek songs, or, you know, an old Roxette album, and that will be played in court, and at which point I'll be like, just let the murderer get away with it. I deserve it.
I want to know, Bill, why do you think this movie won the Palme d'Or?
I think this movie is even though we'll talk about whether or not it's our choice. Yeah. This movie is an appropriate choice for the Palme d'Or, partly for its size, but partly because it is a direct commentary on the times, and that does factor into the choice, which is, you know, a commentary on the times while also being good. This is a movie about dealing with this world now that women work and don't need to get married to survive, and how much male resentment to that has built up and where that has led us.
Oh yeah, he's freaking out that he's a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, freaking out beyond belief. Not to mention the fact that he's also dealing with mental health issues that he's not dealing with. I also really love that fight, because what often happens with couples is that they fight about something, they never actually talk about what they're fighting about because they're so close to it. And also because it's scary to talk about what you're really talking about when you're fighting with somebody, because that could actually be the thread that undoes the relationship. So you keep it in a different realm. But there's other things going on in this film. The fact that gossip becomes fact really quickly. I mean, that's not just a commentary on our times. And the way I find women in this movie also resent each other for not being nice enough. You get that impression as well. So I think that's why it won. I think it's also probably a really easy movie to watch in a crowded week of lengthy, important movies. And I think that also helps. I mean, there's a reason why it became so popular with everybody else around the world after it won at Cannes, which is not usually the trajectory of a Cannes winner.
The thing you said about how it works in the big and in the small, it is a movie that is 2.5 hours long, and it is covering a large period of time. Like, it takes a long time to get through a whole court case, and it covers the details of a crime scene from multiple angles. But then on an intimate level, it's about the fragility of knowledge, about the plasticity of memory.
And how she says you have to invent your own belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it works on many levels, and you can go back and chew more off of it. About that...
Because it's philosophical without going into it too much as well.
Yeah, and without spoon-feeding.
Yeah. Although, why he can't just Google, how do you make a dog vomit? Because he feeds the dog all those pills, and then he's like, oh my god, what do I do? It's like, you should have been prepared for the whole procedure. You shouldn't have just followed a whim.
Yeah. Did he cut his own hair? Why does he have the same page girl haircut that my sisters had in grade school?
The Mary Lou Retton. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to say about the scene, the big argument scene, really the scene that wins the screenplay award. And I want to know what you think about this. First of all, go and watch the Criterion about it, because you get to watch the second and third takes of that scene, and you see how exhausting it was for Sandra Hüller. She's like red in the face after every take. But I wanted to know, in your opinion, Bill, do we leave the scene where we hear the argument taking a side? Like, do we end up hating him? And do we believe that's true for everybody?
I don't know. I mean, I never took sides from the beginning, because I didn't figure that she had killed him.
Yeah, well, neither did I.
Yeah.
But did you ever for a moment think, Jesus Christ, I'd push him out the window?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And she said, I know that Justine Triet said that she had a lot of women tell her that they were on her side way more after that tape. But I did appreciate the added dimension of knowing that it wasn't just a disagreement between these two people, that they really were dealing with something very serious. And that's what I appreciated about it. And that I probably thought she was a lot less selfish after we hear that tape. The look on her face when she's listening to the tape is fascinating. I mean, again, one of my worst nightmares, that would definitely be one of them, to be taped on not knowing it and then have it played for the public in a trial. I mean, terrifying.
Yeah. And then her looking at her son in the audience, listening to it, and just thinking, what does he think of me right now?
Yeah.
Ultimately, when judging a 2.5-hour movie, I find myself never bored or watching the clock or feeling my butt cheeks losing feeling. And I must abide the pleasure principle. This movie is a major success.
I think so too.
We're in an exciting time where movies like this, Conclave, Juror Number 2, paired with the success of the remake of Presumed Innocent on TV, they're making me hopeful that we're about to enter another renaissance of medium budget thrillers. Call Ashley Judd.
All right, Greg, we have gone through the entire competition list, except for one movie, and we come out the other end of it. Would you give the Palme d'Or to Anatomy of a Fall or to a different film?
I'd have to give it to a different film.
Really? How so? Sorry, that's my Carrie Bradshaw.
So as much as I love Anatomy of a Fall, where I'd give it awards would be in both Best Actress and Best Screenplay, a la You Were Never Really Here. And as much as I love Zone of Interest, I wouldn't give it Grand Prix. Its main takeaway for me, alongside all these other movies, I mean, it's a stacked year. Its takeaway is Hooler, who's lasted the longest in my memory. A Best Actress win for both movies would perfectly encapsulate one of my favorite things about 2023, which was the ascendance of Sandra Hüller as one of the greatest actresses working today. So I would not give Anatomy of a Fall the Palme, and I would not give the Grand Prix the Palme either, but I would give them awards in my roster. Can you indulge me while I tell you what else I would give awards to?
I suppose I can.
Thank you. I would still give Jury Prize to Fallen Leaves. I think Kaurismäki is a Jury Prize winner for all seasons. In replacement of Perfect Days, I do pick About Dry Grasses. For Grand Prix, I give it to Youth Spring. May December takes my Best Director. And my Palme d'Or goes to The Taste of Things.
To wrap things up quickly, my Palme d'Or also goes to The Taste of Things. Greg, if you were going to give the Palme d'Or to any movie of 2023, what movie would it be?
It would honestly be The Taste of Things.
Same as well.
Yeah.
It was my number one movie of the year.
Same.
Somewhat influenced by you, because when we saw it, you said, you know what, I think that's my favorite of the year. And I was like, you know what? I think it's mine too. Yeah, and watching it a second time only solidified it. And I cannot find a fucking Blu-ray copy of it to save my life. Anyway.
But thankfully it's on Hoopla, Crave, Canopy.
Yeah, still.
For the sake of being rhetorical, if I went to field and picked a movie that was not in competition to give the Palme to, something that matches the size and the grandeur of The Taste of Things or Youth Spring, I would give it to Killers of the Flower Moon. And I think that's a movie we're going to look back on very proudly, and we will view it as one of Scorsese's best movies. I think we had a bit of a hot-headed moment taking it apart that season, talking about how good a job it does on the issues it speaks of. And I think actually it does most of it right.
I agree. Greg, we've gone on for about 75 hours. I know that our most ardent listeners love spending all day with us, so they don't regret this at all. Hi, Frage. Hi to all of Greg's friends who love talking to him when they can turn him off, basically. I understand. Greg, tell us where we're going next.
Yeah, in our next episode, we're going to 1988, when the Palme d'Or went to a Danish film.
Mm-hmm. All right. We will see you then.
See you then. Thank you for listening to Riviera Rats.
Our podcast is hosted and produced by Bill Antoniou and Gregory Roseborough.
Our music is by Joe Organ.
Our artwork is by Leo Kuvaris.
Follow us on Instagram at Riviera Rats.
Write to us at ratsriviera@gmail.com.
If you want to support our show, tell your friends about us.
Leave us a rating and a review on whatever podcast app you use.